Welcome, everyone, to the Paranormal Round Table. Paranormal Round Table, 3 words. I'm Josh Turner, your host, and with me, as always, is...
It's Sal. Glad to be here, as always. Exactly. The Salresian.
The Salresian.
That's it.
Mondo Salresian.
That's it.
Folks, we got a special treat tonight. We have somebody...
I think this is the episode we all have been waiting for.
Well, and I'll tell you who it is. I'm just going to go ahead and lay it out there.
Lay it out there.
We got a medium, a psychic that's a friend of ours, and she came and she's channeling the spirit of Howard Cosell. That's who's on today.
Okay, that's
just kidding.
Too old school for people. Howard Cosell.
You are correct, sir. It could be Ed McMahon.
Yeah.
No, actually, who we have Vic Cundiff.
We got the man, the myth, the legend.
Mm-hmm.
Mr.
Vic Cundiff, the most mysterious man in radio.
Exactly. But hey.
I've been on his show 12 times, and I don't even know what he looks like.
Hey, the man's got it going on. It's the man of mystery. I think he gives Austin Powers that run. He's the, Dogman encounters international man of mystery right there.
Right. Vic, are you there?
I am.
Well, we want to go ahead and plug our email. It's daswolfman88@gmail.com. daswolfman88@gmail.com. Sal?
And the other one is wolfandsal@gmail.com.
Wolf and Sal.
Send us your stories. We want to hear them. We want to tell them. All right. So with all that stuff out of the way, the pleasantries, hey, we got to get to the show.
Yeah, we got Vic Cundiff on the show.
Vic, man. This is
a big deal for us because, Vic, you have interviewed me many times. And the way you do your interview is a lot different than how I do when I interview. But I have a lot of questions for you because I have asked some of these questions off the air, but I would like to ask them now on the air so that the audience can get a feel for what you think. And
yeah, they get to know Vic Cundiff.
Yep.
So please, Vic, grace us with your presence and tell us everything. Let us know who Vic Cundiff is.
Well, first of all, guys, I'm pretty disappointed. I mean, I'm sitting here listening to this build-up about this great guest and everything, and I'm thinking, wow, I can't wait to hear you got lined up for the show. And then next thing I know, you're mentioning my name, and I'm thinking, well, what in the world? What's going on?
Hey, man, this is the show for you, about you, because I know there's a lot of people out there that speculate about you, Vic. So please.
They do?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. We get people. I get people all the time because I have been on, interviewed with you so many times, and people will constantly hit me up about who you are and what do you look like. I lie to them a lot of times. I just say, Ryan Reynolds, he looks kind of like that, but a little bit bigger.
He could be the stunt double, right?
Yeah, he's like a little bit bigger and a little more muscular.
Mm-hmm.
I just tell him that.
That chiseled, he's got that chiseled jawline, everything.
I tell him he wears glasses, though. He's Ryan Reynolds with glasses.
More like Clark Kent, like Superman.
More the Deadpool Ryan Reynolds.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm just kidding. Seriously, though, yeah, I just make up all kinds of stuff because I don't know what to tell people. And then they're like, "Is that true?" And I'm like, "No."
I need to send you guys a picture. Not my picture, but
awesome.
So you want to start off the questioning,
sure,
Sal, with what you have?
Yeah, I've got a few questions. And I'm going to start out with something basic because I know the folks out there want to know who Vic Cundiff is. So with that being said, hey, let's start out with something like, hey, Vic, how did you get started in this line of work?
Well, back in 2007 and 2008, I was co-hosting a Sasquatch-specific talk radio show, a podcast with a now-deceased gentleman named Shane McMahon. And as we were hosting that show, we would rub elbows with researchers who would go out and beat the bushes all the time looking for Sasquatch, namely bear and coonbow, and some other people too. And after a while, they started coming back talking about these dog-faced boogers. Well, I'd never heard that term before, so I'm thinking, okay, dog-faced booger, what could they be talking about? So I think I actually sent one of those guys, and maybe both those guys, a message to try and find out more about this. And when I found out that what they were talking about was basically, dogmen, that just blew me away. What had initially attracted me to this whole Bigfoot topic, next thing you know, sorry, my dog's snoring like a monster behind me right now.
It's all good, brother. Keep going.
I can't even hear it.
I can't either.
Okay, good. Well, yeah, so what drew me to the Sasquatch phenomenon all of a sudden, with these dogmen, these dog-faced boogers, everything was multiplied by a factor of 10. 10 times creepier, in my opinion, 10 times more mysterious, and everything was just so much more interesting to me with them than it had been with Bigfoot. So, yeah, I started looking into the topic, and it wasn't long before I found out that, people who have encounters with these things, they didn't have anyone to go to that they could count on for getting help dealing with their experiences. So, yeah, I thought, you know what, there's a big need to have someone that can be that person that an eyewitness, a dogman eyewitness, can approach for help. And I guess the rest is history. I started Dogman Encounters and the website, and it wasn't too long after that before I started the show, and the rest is history.
Wow, that's amazing. You pretty much explained what happened to me in terms of, for the longest time, I was interested and loved the idea of Bigfoot, Sasquatch, and then, of course, thanks to your show, I got turned on to this upright walking, canid-looking creature, and I was blown away with that one. So, and now, of course, look where you are. You got this great show. Many, many people out there listening to it. I being one. I've heard all of your episodes, by the way. So, with this line of work and all the hard work and effort you put in there, there must be positives and negatives. Start out with the negatives. What are some of the negatives that you encounter being involved in all this good stuff?
Well, I'd say about the biggest negative, and really the only negative that comes to mind is it's easy to think that just once in a blue moon, an eyewitness will reach out to me and ask for help, or maybe express interest in coming on the show too. But understand, I don't bat an eye if I get 3 or 4 dogman eyewitnesses contacting me in one day. Sometimes I'll get as many as 6 or 7 brand new dogman eyewitnesses who have never contacted me before, reaching out to me for help in one day. And unfortunately, what comes along with that would be a lot of either time wasters or people who just are so disorganized that they wind up just wasting your time. It's hard to know if they're trying to just pull the wool over my eyes, or if they're just so irresponsible that they ask for help, but they're not there when you try to contact them to give them help. But yeah, the most frustrating thing, the most negative aspect, and really the only negative aspect that comes to mind, like I said, that I could think of is, you set up a time and date to contact these eyewitnesses, and so many of them, you contact them. If you set an appointment at 2 p.m., because this is what I do for a living. I'm not an attorney, I'm not a doctor, not a garbage man. This is what I do. I help dogman eyewitnesses for a living. You set an appointment at 2 p.m. Eastern to talk to this eyewitness who contacted you about this supposed really traumatic experience they had, or experience is. You call them right on the nose. You know I am, guys. I'll call them right at 2 p.m. sharp, and it goes to voicemail. Or even more common than that, you call them and they don't have voicemail, or their voicemail's not set up. So you try to reach out to them, and that just fell flat on its face. And then you might send them a text or an email, and it's like they've fallen off the face of the earth. So yeah, that by far and away is the really the only negative thing about what I do, and it just drives me crazy.
Yeah, I can see where that would do wonders for, being sarcastic. But gosh, yeah, totally agree with you there. So, but on the other side, what are some of the best positives of what you do?
Oh, that's easy. By far and away, the best thing about what I do is when you have someone who's a true red zone case that contacts me, and they're just in a real bad way, and just by talking with them and pointing out things that they probably would know if they weren't so distraught and shaken up about what happened to them, they probably realize that if they weren't so distraught. But by pointing certain things out to them, and just having a good conversation with them, to see them turn around, and next thing you know, they are enjoying life again, and functioning the way they should be functioning. Yeah, that's why I do this. I mean, some people have put it out there that, yeah, Vic's in it for the money, to sell T-shirts, for this, for that, for notoriety. Well, no, that's not the truth. None of that is. When I hear an eyewitness tell me that, before they contacted me, they were having trouble just going out at night to take the trash out. And then after we have our conversations, all of a sudden they're going out into the woods, even at nighttime, or just they're functioning on a healthy level. That's all the reward I need. That's why I do this. So yeah, that's the positive that comes to mind, more so than anything about what I do.
That's fantastic, because I can relate to the not being able to function normally, and so big kudos to you. Thank you for doing that, Vic. Thank you for that, definitely. So next question I got real quick is just kind of a two-part question, and basically it's, what event in your life put you on this path to be interested in just the whole cryptid, this whole obviously not normal topic? And then with that, what episode or event or encounter stands out the most in your mind?
Well, I can't point to one thing that put me on the track to doing this, but I can tell you that I think with my makeup, I've always been the type to get bored way too quickly, way too easily. And because of that, I think that's why I've always been drawn to monsters and things that go bump in the night. And then, yeah, in 2007 and in 2008, to suddenly find myself co-hosting a Sasquatch specific talk radio show or podcast. I mean, I was pinching myself. I was just so happy to be involved with something like that. And then now to be involved with Dogman encounters and Bigfoot Eyewitness Radio, I'm doing what I love to do, helping people, talking about a topic that I'm still really interested in. Now, I guess I should qualify that last comment by saying, no, I don't want to receive just pictures of alleged dogman footprints and all that stuff. No, I still, because of my schedule, only want to hear from eyewitnesses who actually need help. I'm not really blessed with the spare time to be able to maybe evaluate evidence or anything like that. So I just wanted to put that out there. But I do feel blessed to be doing what I still love to do. I love the dogman topic, like I said, and more so than anything, I just love helping these people. Well, at least to the best of my ability. So yeah, I feel like I just want to pinch myself constantly to be in this position. The fact that I'm doing what I'm doing. So
That's phenomenal. Hey, I got a family member, a cousin of mine, that's always said, if you're doing what you love, you never work a day in your life. I don't know if that's entirely true, but definitely can agree with it.
yeah, I agree.
Oh, wow. So what are your possibilities that, what potential future possibilities do you see for yourself going down this path, of course?
Well, I'm not looking for goals. My main goal, my only goal from what I do here is just to help people. It's not one of those things where I'm looking to work my way up from middle management up into being a CEO or anything like that. No, I'm just happy doing what I do. I mean, I'm not looking to change anything about what I do. I mean, if I'm doing exactly what I'm doing right now in 5, 10 years, I'll be perfectly happy. So
Your goal is
yeah,
reached.
it's reached.
Yeah,
That's right.
awesome. Well, I guess, like I said, there you have it, folks. Very normal Vic Cundiff, but that's not the end of the questions. We got a lot more to talk about. Josh, please.
I don't have any questions. I'm just here. I was
Wait a
falling
minute.
asleep. Are you guys still talking?
Yeah.
Just
So
kidding.
it's not a 10-minute interview? Is that what you're
Vic's
saying?
like, I gotta go. I got witnesses to deal with.
Yeah.
I got a guy that saw a ring-tailed lemur that thinks it's a dog man.
Oh. Hey,
Oh no, not that guy.
Well, on defense of the ringtail. When
Oh,
I
there was
a
really
young
a guy
man.
like that? I was just joking.
No.
Oh my
no
gosh.
comment.
No comment.
Well,
Holy-
you
already
get the good
happened.
ones. You get the good ones, and logic dictates you're going
You're
to
gonna
get the
weird
not
one.
so
Well,
good ones.
We've already got that, right, Armando? We
Yeah.
have gotten some weird. Okay, like Vic, you told me like be ready because people come out of the woodworks. I haven't really seen like this rush of like really weird people, and I just kind of realized that all the weird people that had already hit me up when I'd been on your show, they returned, and then they brought like a couple people with them that were just really, really out there. And yeah, I've already had to block like a few people, dude, because it was just. And now I've been threatened too. I've got my first
apart from that goofy individual working at a movie theater in his 5-second encounter.
Yeah, he tried to threaten us, like I was like, wow, dude. But and then it turned out that it wasn't even his. Well, we don't think it was his encounter.
Yeah.
It was his boss or something.
Yeah, the boss lady.
Pretty ridiculous. No, I've already had somebody like tell me that they hate my guts and that I'm terrible and that
Thank
Sal
you
should,
for warning us, Vic.
Sal should do the show without me. And then we get emails all the time. The opposite that I should lose Sal.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're like, you guys talk over each other. You guys do this. You guys do this. It's like, we're friends. Like, we've been friends for four going on 5 years, and we just talk, and your guys, and that's the way the show is set up. It's like they're privy. You people listening, you're privy to two friends talking about these things that these stories that we've collected.
Yeah, it's a microcosm of, what we do and what we did on our first time we met. It was almost
just talk.
Yeah, almost for 8 hours straight.
Yeah, and it was in Houston, and I had to go to San Antonio the next day and do all kinds of stuff, and I was dog tired that next day. But man, it was a stimulating conversation, dude. We talked. See, because Armando, you're a big fan of Vic's show.
Oh, I've been a fan since he started.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, Vic, I was not. Nothing against you or the show or whatever, but I just
I was quoting episodes to him, Vic.
Yeah, and I didn't know hardly any of them. I think I've listened to 4 or 5 maybe.
Yeah.
Like I like, for maybe the first, like Kyleman, and then I was like, I think I listened to the 117 because my wife loves that one.
I like listening to, apart from yours, I like listening to episode 66 because just the elements in that one are kind of creepy.
I don't even remember what was that one?
Well, that was with the gentleman, and correct me if I'm wrong, Vic, the gentleman who, as a young boy of about 12 years old, was taken with his uncles, took him out on a hunt/extermination mission of and
we touched base on that because we got a story from the people from the Dominican Republic.
Yeah, something
about
like that.
They were ex-military that went to the Dominican Republic for the sugar cane.
Yeah, it was relevant.
Very weird. Very weird. Yeah, well, Vic, and like you, I've talked to you before. I have not really listened to many of your episodes, but I don't listen to a lot of.
You don't even listen to yours.
I don't listen to mine. Yeah, no, I don't like hearing my voice. But I know that whenever I was talking to you the first time, like I remember I just like sent my story to you, and you contacted me. And I was surprised. I just thought, well, you know what? If this guy, he can take it and do what he wants with it. It's what happened to me. And then when you contacted me, I was like, whoa. And I had never actually listened to, I don't think I'd even listened to your show at that time. So I wasn't like taken aback by, oh, this is the guy, that's on the show. Because I don't think I even listened to it. I just saw that it was a show, like a platform where you could send it in or whatever. And it was a friend of a friend that told me, there's a guy that does these shows and you can send your story in. So I typed it up and I sent it to you. And then I went on your show and I just recounted what had happened. But I remember like after talking to you after that first episode, and I told you, look, I've been collecting stories of things that have happened to people for a long time, just for my own, because I wanted to make sense of what it was that I had seen. And over the years, me and you you and I, Vic, have talked a lot about these critters, whatever you want to call them. And we have talked, me and you, like just off air many times, Vic, for a long time. We've talked and just speculating on what these things are, what they could be. I've asked you a lot of questions because you like me have talked to many people who have claimed to have seen these things, and I'm still like not really understanding what we're dealing with. And the prevalence of these. Yeah, I believe that because it's, the urban sprawl and all that, that's part of it. But I don't think that's the whole story. I think there's more to it and why we're seeing more and more of these things, but also just the whole paranormal in general, like why we're seeing such a spike in the paranormal activity. Yeah. But I have a question for you, Vic. What do you think? I mean, now I know you believe in Dogman, obviously, but what do you think werewolves are? Like, do you believe in that?
Well, I think people saw Dogman in ancient times, and since they couldn't explain what it was that they were seeing, they just explained it away with religion and mystic arts and other things like that. So that's what I think what was going on. People were actually seeing canine type dogmen, and since they didn't know what it was that they actually were looking at, they didn't realize that what they were seeing looks the same way 24/7, 365. They saw that it was walking in a bipedal fashion, and they just assumed, okay, well, it must be witchcraft. It must be a person who somehow magically has been transformed into the form of a beast, and that must be what I'm looking at. I think that's what the genesis of this whole werewolf legend. That's how it all began, I think. But yeah, I could be wrong. That's just my opinion.
Well, I have a question in pertaining to that.
Yeah, because this is great, Vic. Because I got a couple of little ones after this. Go ahead, Wolf.
So you believe that all the werewolf stories and accounts come from the Dogman? Like that's all it is?
I do believe that. Yeah.
What do you make of the transformation stories? People that they see these things wearing clothing. I had a guy that sent me a story out of Missouri and I did it on your show where he saw one wearing like what looked like a necklace.
A pendant of some sort?
It had like it was shiny. He could see it, him and his son.
Well, when you get into that, I do believe in demons, and I think they can manifest themselves. A lot of people don't believe that they can. I do believe they can. Now, I could be so wrong about that. And I'll be the first person to admit that. But yeah, I think when you have someone who's legit coming forward talking about seeing something that looks like a dog man or a werewolf that's got clothing on, something like that, you name it, I think you're talking about a demon instead of an actual dog man. Again, like I said, I could be wrong about that, but yeah, when you get into people talking about seeing transformations or something that looks like a werewolf with maybe a ripped shirt on or something like that, yeah, I think that's a demon and not an actual bona fide dog man.
Well, I have a story that I got from someone who claimed that they saw one of these, I don't know what you call it, bipedal canines along the side of a road walking, carrying what looked like a dead rabbit, and it had a shirt. Like literally, it looked like it was wearing a shirt. Like what was even weirder is like when they came around the corner, they had to kind of slow down. They came around a curve. I'm sorry, and there was a husband and a wife, and they had a child in the back that fortunately was asleep. And this thing was wearing what looked like ripped clothing. Like the shirt was just tattered and kind of dirty. And the creature looked grayish white, but it was definitely canine head, was walking along the side of the road. And this happened in Tennessee. I believe it was Tennessee. And it was carrying what looked like a dead rabbit in its hands. And the description, talked to the guy, like he gave me a complete rundown. Like he's like, look, I don't know what this was. And he's like, I don't know what to call it. He didn't call it a dog man. He's an old guy now. He's probably in his 60s. But, this story he gave me was just like really, like his wife saw it, and it makes me wonder, like, the shirt, and he said it was just like a t-shirt and he could even see writing on the t-shirt. It was like a regular t-shirt. It wasn't some sort of like, special t-shirt or anything like that. It wasn't a button-down shirt. It was just a regular t-shirt. And from what I remember him saying, he don't remember seeing pants because it was so quick. But like, what do you make of that? Does a dog man wear a t-shirt? Would they put on clothing? Have you heard of that? I mean, and what is a dog man? I mean, like, honestly, like what is it? I mean, like, if do you believe it's some sort of evolved wolf or like, what do you think it is?
Well, as far as what a dogman really is, all I can do as far as that would go would be to just throw whatever I can at the wall and see what sticks. I have no idea what they are. All I can do is just guess. Did they evolve from dire wolves? No, I don't think that's the case because there just hasn't been enough time for that evolution to take place. But I don't know. I've got no idea what a canine type dogman is or a type 3 dogman would be.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I have no clue. All I could do is just basically guess as far as that would go. Now, as far as the shirt topic goes, no, I don't think dogmen wear shirts or any other clothing or jewelry or anything like that because, they do what they do and there's no need for them to do that. If you see a creature that looks like a werewolf or a dogman wearing a shirt, like I said, I think it's got to be some kind of a demon that you're dealing with and not a dogman.
It's interesting, Vic, because I'm with you on the whole dog. There is the Dogman phenomena that is flesh and blood, which is what your show is all about. Doesn't mean that you're so rigid that you don't believe anything else. I want folks to know that. Vic, this is just what his show's about. But this brings to mind, the whole thing with the Dogman. I always, and I've said it in previous shows, and I always state my position that I tell Wolf that I believe these are the remnants of the Cynocephali. The Cynocephali in Greek mythology, Greek legends, were civilized, dog-headed men. And you know as well as I do that, a nation, a civilization can decline way faster than it can rise to a high level of advancement. And I think so, just like Rome, it happened to the Cynocephali civilization. And what we're seeing now are the feral remnants, because I'm fairly certain if there were pockets of these civilized Cynocephali after they declined for whatever reason, then they all scattered to the four winds, smaller bands, and, moving out all over I believe, all over the world except Australia, because they could, from time immemorial, they could have done that during the Ice Age and so on and so forth. So that's what I usually lean towards as far as the origin of these dogmen.
Interesting, because we talked to Simon Young.
Yeah,
and we did a 2 or 3 hour interview with him the other night. We haven't aired it as of this recording tonight, because we have so many things we've already recorded. We're like 8 weeks ahead right now. But one of the things that I was going to say, Simon he's 100% that there is no Dogman in Australia, because he doesn't believe that they evolved there.
But he does agree with Vic that if you see a Dogman in Australia,
it's
people
a demon.
It's a demon.
Something demonic entity, some sort of shit. Yeah.
So what's your take on my view there, Vic? What do you think?
Well, gonna have to agree to disagree on that, because cynocephali, they were described as being dog-headed men. They had plantigrade-style legs like a Sasquatch or a human, and then they had the head of a dog, basically. Well, most of the dogmen that are reported as being seen, they're reported as having digitigrade legs, like a dog, like a cat. So, you just can't evolve from a plantigrade leg structure over into a digitigrade one in the blink of an eye, which that's what would have had to have happened if we're talking about the cynocephali, which they were described as being in existence not all that long ago, to now present day having the leg structure that most dogmen seem to have. Yeah, I just don't agree with that. But again, I can't replace your hypothesis with one of my own, because I've got no clue what they are, where they come from, or anything like that. So all I can tell you is what I don't think they are, and I don't think that they are cynocephali.
Do you think they could have potentially just, the truth is we all don't know. We all don't know anything exactly. So their origins.
You don't know anything. I know everything.
Well, well, the truth is we all don't know everything, or as far as the origins. Do you think they could potentially, the cynocephali, could they have potentially, just judging by the looks, the exterior, do you think they could have interbred with wolves? I mean, seeing that they had a dog-headed, due to their anatomy, I don't know, I guess just a question. What do you think, Vic?
No, I don't think they could have done that, because if they had a plantigrade leg structure, then that right there tells me that their DNA would be so different than wolves' DNA that it would just be impossible for the two to breed. So, no, I don't think even that's an option.
Well, I'm definitely taking in all this information.
My theory is I'm sorry, Vic, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt. Before I forget, something just popped to mind that I wanted to put out there. Yeah, I've got more respect for Simon than you can shake a stick at, but we do disagree, like you mentioned. We definitely do disagree on whether dogmen actually are or are not in Australia. And something that I'd like to put out there, I hope he realizes that quite a few Aborigines, they have contacted me actually about their legends involving dogmen. So it's not like it's an unprecedented topic there. I mean, there are plenty of Aborigines that, like I said, have reached out to me and talked about the legends, different legends about dogmen in their country. So on their continent. So it's not exactly unprecedented. It's something that's been talked about for a long, long time.
That's good to know. It's good to know.
Well, I think, yeah, and there's going to be a disagreement there because I like Simon. I think does an impressive body of research on the Yowie. But he was talking about if I saw one go into a portal, I'd follow it. And I'm like, what? No. Or you couldn't even point a gun at me and make me walk into that portal. I'd just be like, well, at least I'm going to die here in this realm and not in
some other realm,
some nether realm or something. You know, have you played Mortal Kombat and seen where Scorpion comes from? I don't want to end up there. That's what it's, you know, and I'm like, no way, dude. I'm not going there, dude.
Yeah, it's really interesting though, you know, according to him, you know, he's of the position that they don't exist, and if they do, they are a demonic entity of sorts. But, you know, I like to leave all my options open because it goes back to the old saying, when you think you know something, you got 3 or 4 or 5 more questions pop up after you've gotten an answer to that question.
Yeah, so, you answer one question and the door opens for others. Vic, I've gotten so many stories. Me and you have talked off air many times about the strange stories. The story with the out by the lake where the guy was doing the pest control and they saw what they thought was the wolf-headed looking creature swimming, and then it went onto the shore and turned into a man. I don't know what to make of that. I've just, you know, I'm puzzled. You know, and this guy wasn't he was a friend of a friend that I actually got to sit there and interview and talk to face, looking across the table from him. And this guy wasn't like, you know, goofing around. He was being honest what he saw, you know, and I was with 2 of the people that talked to him. And so it's not like, you know, these people, I don't think he was just making stuff up. I asked him too. I was like, you know, have you ever had anything else weird happen to you? He said he thought once I think the only thing he said, he thought that once he saw like what may or may not have been a UFO like move in the sky, but a lot of people have seen stuff like that, but it had nothing to do with that encounter. And other than that, he had nothing else to tell me. So, you know, it wasn't like he was just some imaginative guy. And he, you know, and a lot of times, you know, Vic, the people you talk to, they're not very imaginative people. I mean, they're not like, they're the kind of people that are, yeah, I was out there by the watering hole and I saw this thing. That's kind of who they are.
Just tell you what they saw.
They're just very down to, it's very down to earth country people that are out there and they run into these things. And then somebody tells them, hey, there's a guy that's got a show. You should go. Same thing happened to me. And they told me, hey, you know, go, you know, look for this guy or whatever. And I just started looking. I didn't even know what a dogman was. My brother told me dogman, the term. And so I looked it up and I searched it. Now, I've talked with Chris. I don't know if you've heard my interviews with Chris and with DDoS. I don't like the term dogman because I don't think it looks like a dog. And 90% of, I'd say 99% of what I get sounds very wolf-like. I don't think I've heard anybody even really say it looked dog-like. They will say that at first they thought it was like a German Shepherd or a Husky, but then immediately they realize, oh, that's some sort of wolf. Oh, wait, that's some sort of wolf creature. Then it becomes a werewolf in their mind because that's all they know is that pop culture. Is a werewolf. And so that's what it becomes. And I have very few people that have actually claimed to have seen some sort of transformation. In fact, I don't really have many, but I've heard people say that they've seen it go from being a bipedal whatever to a man, but not really the other way around. I can't remember off the top of my head. I think I've had 1 or 2 that I've collected over the years that claim that, you know. But I've also gotten stories where people have claimed that these big black looking wolves, we talked about that in a recent episode, Sal, some guys that I grew up with, they claimed that some jumped out in front of them on the road, and that one of them stood upright and walked across the road like a man. Yeah, I've heard that like more than once, you know, just in my hometown, you know, like, but it has something to do with, I think, the Cadejo, which is like the black
devil dog, like
the devil dog, the black dogs. So my question, I guess, for you, Vic, is do these things, can they communicate? Because I've heard people say that they've heard them speaking Spanish.
Yeah, that's part of that. Yeah, that tale. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Vic.
Oh, no problem. Wow. I don't know. I don't think they can because, in my opinion, dogmen are a creature that is designed to accomplish a certain goal, and that goal is just to survive. So why would a dogman need the ability to speak with a human? Not to say that they can't, because there are a lot of credible eyewitnesses out there who report seeing seeing a dog man walk out in front of them, and next thing you know, there's some type of telepathy going on. Maybe there's something to that. I'm not going to dismiss that out of hand. Maybe it is possible. Maybe that actually is happening. But if you strip it down to basically bare bones, why would a dog man need the ability to communicate with the person? So I'm not really sure what to think about that. I mean, I'd say the odds are that there's nothing to that, but I'm still open minded enough to say maybe there is something to that. I really don't know.
Vic, do you remember when we did the show, and I can't remember what number it was, but the lady had the son who was communicating with the dog man that was coming to his bedroom window? I don't know if you remember that one. And it was 166, or no, maybe it was 169, whatever it was. 186, 188, one of those numbers.
Just check the playlist on Vic's channel. He's got them all. Get all the Josh Turner episodes together.
Yeah, or you can go to
our
our channel, Paranormal Round Table. We have a playlist of my Dogman stuff made up on there. And
Yeah,
there's 12, and then
playlist. Yeah.
you got it too, Vic. But anyways, somebody can find it. Well, I mean, I did some research, so a little further investigating after that whole situation, and I talked to the dad a little further, a little more extensively. And one of the things that his son told him was that the dog man would communicate with him, but he wouldn't talk. It was like he would hear him in his head, and I know that's telepathy. And he said that sometimes it would move its mouth, but the sound wasn't really coming from its mouth. It was coming from his head. So I think the child was hearing this thing talking into his mind. And it was trying to get him to come outside to play with him. Basically, like, just that was the gist of it, like over and over again. And he would, because his parents kept telling him, don't ever go outside, don't go with strangers or whatever. But the window, the thing with the window was open, and there wasn't like a screen.
Right.
So this thing was just like, would just literally the child told him how it would just like lean in the window with its arms crossed and just talk to him. So at any time, if that child, where the table was, where the little child would draw the pictures, like it was like 2 feet away, not even 2 feet away from the window. So if this thing wanted to grab that child and take off, it could have.
Sounds like easy pickings for it.
It didn't do that. And it didn't sound like it was an extremely large creature from what I was told. It was more like 6-7 feet or something like that, if I remember correctly. But it just seemed like to me, there is some form of communication. I got a story out of Idaho, very recent, just like a week ago, maybe a week and a half, maybe even 2 weeks, I guess now. My time is just running together. But these people were camping, and they encountered a dog man that was down by the water, that was on all fours, and it was like drinking, and they thought it was a wolf, but then they saw the front, like what they thought were the legs, sprawled out, holding the ground, Now, when she told me it was holding the ground, I thought, whoa, paws don't hold ground. She said that it bolted upright and just went straight up, like whoop. It wasn't like in 2 or 3 motions. It was like one straight motion of just popping up. And this thing had hands. It turned, and she claims that it was her and two other adults and a child, and that they all heard it speaking into their minds. Like, it didn't use its mouth, but it did communicate, and it began to just make, like, literally small talk, like just small talk. Like, like just says, "Oh, I'm sorry." Basically, it was like very polite, and I'm going like, "Wow, is this even?" Like, it was just very like just being nice, and this is okay. You go your way, I go mine, and it just began to back away. And it turned once it got a good distance away, walking backwards. It just kind of turned and then got on all fours and ran. She thinks that maybe because one of the men was wearing a sidearm, and maybe it saw it and didn't want any trouble, so it began to be like. But just the fact that she's very adamant and has sent me 2 or 3 messages about it being telepathic. Like, what do you make of that, Vic?
Wow, due to a lack of information, I'm not really sure what to think about that. If you do what I do for as long as I've done it, or half as long, there's going to come a time where you start to wonder, okay, well, are these dogmen actual flesh and blood entities, or are we talking about something that's ethereal in nature? You can only listen to so many credible eyewitnesses talk about seeing a dogman that was drinking out of a nasty, stagnant pond, and then they saw it eating roadkill, and then they saw another one with young that were maybe half of the size of the bigger one. You hear credible eyewitnesses coming forward and talking about seeing that sort of thing, then that kind of paints that picture that, okay, they must be flesh and blood. And then you hear so many credible eyewitnesses come forward and talk about seeing dogmen just vanish into thin air and doing this and doing that points towards them having to be of an ethereal nature. You just bounce back and forth from thinking, okay, yeah, they must be flesh and blood. Okay, no, maybe they must be ethereal. I've bounced back and forth more times than you could shake a stick at. But like a guest, I can't remember what episode it was, but I had a guest come on and he made a really good comment. He talked about an episode of House where I guess House said if you hear hooves clicking on the floor, think horse, not zebra. Well, if I'm going to make that leap to thinking that dogmen must be ethereal in nature, then yeah, I guess I am thinking zebra instead of horse because the explanation that, okay, yeah, they are flesh and blood, that's a lot easier to swallow and much more likely the case than them actually being of demonic nature or some other ethereal being.
So that's another question I have. Okay, my wife has had Dogman encounter that it appeared like it just showed up in the house. We have covered, me and you, a story that came out of San Diego of a dogman. Well, I don't want to call it a dogman. I would say a bipedal canid appeared in someone's house, but then it went out through the window. So there was signs of forced exit, but not forced entry. And of course, you and I, Sal, we did the show, which also has not aired, but we've done it, the werewolf show, and we covered the Serbian werewolf, where the people that had communicated with me and Diablo and talking about how Diablo was my nickname for my brother. They told us how this thing was very spirit like, but it could grab, like it grabbed the lady. It knocked over a servant, I believe, and it did like several physical things, and then it broke a window, opened a chest. Yes. I mean, it could do physical things, and it appeared as a black, inky canid, bipedal canid. Well, my wife has had an encounter like that. That's how I met her, when she contacted me after being on your show. And of course, Vic, you've talked to her, and then, I told her story, it was a brief, like I didn't really go into detail because your show is the platform more for the physical.
Yeah, for the physical evidence.
Yeah, not the spiritual one. But then, so what do you make of that? Because I mean, like, there's so many of these like spiritual type encounters. Like me and Armando were talking one day. I can't remember if we talked about it on Chris's show or one of the shows where there was almost like a haunting, where these people would see this werewolf type creature walk along the beach every night since like the 70s, and it would just disappear.
Yeah, we were on Chris's show with
Chris's show. Okay, yeah, because I've talked about so many. This I can't even keep track, but there's so many stories, and I mean, I'm just like that part of it. I can't dismiss it because I know that we did a Ouija board show, which also has not aired yet.
You keep your Ouija boards.
Sal's so creeped out by that.
I don't like
But there was a Ouija board that these people played with, and they summoned a demonic werewolf creature. I mean, there's just no other way around it. That's what it was. I mean, and I know that there is a demonic, like God, like that, not God, but I mean, like like obviously for me, my beliefs, a false God, but that different cultures have worshipped at different times, and it's a demonic entity that is wolf-headed. And I've wondered before, like, is this a manifestation of it? Is it some sort of avatar of it, or what is it? I mean, I know the spiritual aspect of it is so bizarre.
Well,
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Vic. I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem.
I'm sorry. I left it open. I was going to whoever was going to answer it was going to jump in and answer it. Go ahead, Vic.
You go ahead, Vic. You're the man of the hour, or however long the show lasts.
Well, I think as long as we accept the fact that we don't know what the physical limitations of a demon are. There are a lot of people who have ideas about what those limits might be, but no one actually knows for sure what their limitations are. Maybe they can manifest and then manipulate physical items. I mean, that would explain a lot. It would explain what Josh was just talking about with those various encounters. There are encounters that just popped into my head when you were talking about the ones you just mentioned, Josh, that I can't mention. I can't share with you guys tonight because, yeah, the eyewitnesses don't want that done. But yeah, I mean, they recounted experiences where they saw something that looked like a dog man, and it manifested, and then it manipulated things, physical items. So I'm not really sure what to think about that. But like I said, going back to my point, we really don't know what the limitations are of demons. And if these are demons, then that would explain a lot.
I was actually eating dinner, man, my throat, yesterday. And I took my brother for his birthday. He's born on Cinco de Mayo, so it's funny. Yeah, and how convenient. Yeah, so I took him out yesterday, and we ate at this Mediterranean restaurant that we go to on occasions. And there was a lady there that was there. She's Arab, and it was so packed, so busy yesterday that we had to like sit at a table with some people that were. And it was crazy because the people that were next to us, I believe it was a woman and a child. And they were like from Mexico City, and everybody at the table was really cool. It was different people, but everybody spoke really good English. We all communicated, and I was like, I guess we have to sit here because it's just the whole restaurant was just full. It's a big place, but there was an Arab woman that was across from us, and she began to converse with my wife. And she was an older woman, you know, and we began to talk, and then I don't even know how, but my wife, they asked what we do, and my wife said, well, my husband's a security company, and then he does a show. She's very proud of that. She's really into the whole paranormal thing. And she's one of the people that pushed me into doing it. She's like, you know, you should do this. You know, it's something that you're good at, and you know a lot about it. And of course, the other person that pushed me was you, Vic. But this woman was talking, and the conversation came up about the jinn. And she said that one of the forms that they like to take is canine, was dogs. She said that they like to appear as dogs, in particular black dogs. Another thing she said, which was kind of interesting, was that sometimes they will walk on two legs. So that was kind of crazy. And of course, I've talked about this, whatever you want to call it, it's a type of jinn that's a particularly nasty jinn that actually preys upon people and their life force, and that will actually kill people. And so there is a legend an Arab legend. It's just a legend in like several different regions of the Middle East that there's a wolf that will actually stalk and kill this particular jinn that's like a ghoul, as they call it, and they even have a name for it, like Nagala and Gula and Guela. It's just weird, like the different translations of it or whatever. And they believe that there is this wolf type creature that will actually stalk and kill it. And then we've talked about that, Armando. So that was a brief conversation that I had yesterday. So I don't know what this thing is, but I know that I've read that in some of the legends, I was reading the Turkish legend of it, that it actually walks like a man, which I don't know what that means, if it walks in like a flesh and blood, or if it actually walks around on two legs like a man, and if that's the case. And then it kind of ties into what we were talking about with the whole rake-looking creature, or Wendigo. There was a whole debate about what it was, rake or Wendigo.
I'm of the opinion that it's a Wendigo. But the younger generation, since that creepy pasta stuff, they named it a rake. I think it was a creature created, fictional creature created from the Wendigo. So that's why I say Wendigo.
So it's
inspired that little.
Well, the Wendigo would be a ghoul too, because it actually does eat flesh.
Yeah.
And supposedly the wolf, this wolf creature, whatever, actually kills that. Supposedly. Okay. And the Arabs have a legend that you're not supposed to, and not just the Arabs, but the all the different, like Afghanistan, Azerbaijan, all those different Turkmenistan, that whole region, all the way across the Middle East to Persia, which is now Iran. They all have a legend that's very similar to that. And it says that if you hear the wailing of a woman crying, "Help, help, the wolf has got me," that you were not supposed to respond. Because this wolf creature,
entity.
whatever, is doing what it does, which is killing the Gala. So you're not supposed to intervene in any way. You're not supposed to stop it. And if you do try to save this woman from the wolf, then the wolf will devour you too. Because that woman is actually a demon that's using human flesh to walk around and cannibalize. That's a legend. And then there's a book, I've read it. It's called Legends of the Fire Spirits. And there's a couple other references, the books that I've read that I referenced that in. And I had talked to a friend of mine's dad, and my friend has had a couple, I don't know what you'd call them, werewolf/dogman encounters. And his dad was very adamant that that's a real thing and that these creatures exist. And the way that they describe these creatures is very similar to the eyewitness that that I talked about in episode 247, I believe.
Ernest.
Yeah, Ernest. Because that's what we call him. But yeah, and that when he talked about that creature, like it was described very similar to this ghoul. And so maybe that is one of the functions of these creatures, is to keep those things in
check.
And of course there was some fantastical story that even DDoS himself admitted was like, he just thought it was whatever. He actually, to his credit, took it down off of his channel because
though he had a lot of views on it, he took down that particular episode. I listened to it as soon as he posted it, and then after a while it was gone, and then he put it back up, and after he put it back up, I listened to it again, and it was
I haven't heard it, but I know that it was very fantastical that this guy claims he saw one of these ghoul-looking rake, whatever you want to call them, Wendigo, take out like 5 dogmen or some nonsense. I don't believe that crap. I mean, I can tell you right now, I've seen one of these dogmen up close, and if that thing took out 5 of those, then there's no hope for humanity. They would have already devoured the entire world. Okay. I mean, that's what I think. I mean, I think that's just a bunch of nonsense. And I would tell the guy to his freaking face, he's a liar. To his face, I would tell him that, because I don't believe that for a second, dude. I just don't. And then something about it took a 50 cal or something to shoot it. And I'm like, okay, you and me, Armando, both know guns. Okay. 50 cal, you're going to shoot most things. It's going to take care of it. I mean, unless it's like a demonic entity, like we've talked about. If it's a flesh and blood creature, it's gone.
Right. Well, if it's a demonic entity, though, bullets wouldn't affect it.
Yeah, bullets wouldn't affect it. But that's just,
Yeah, but real quick, since we're on this topic, Vic, like I said earlier, your episode 66 with the gentleman who, as a young boy of 12 years old, his uncles were these basically, dogman exterminators. And that, he told a story about how he was taken with his uncles on a mission to clear out a rogue dogman. And, and he explained everything in detail and what his uncles did. And it made sense when he, he gave all the details. Episode 66, folks. You want to hear it all? It's there. The element that caught my attention and at the end, because I know you asked him a few questions, and one had to do with his uncles detecting the signs. And the uncle said, one of the things that really stuck in my mind is his uncle said, you find folded clothes. So what did you make of that when you got that particular detail? Because all the rest of the other stuff made sense in the hunting aspect.
Find folded clothes.
Yeah, and that was one of the signs.
Like people it had killed?
No, the clothes were folded. That was a sign that they were in the area. What do you make of that, Vic? I mean, how did you take that particular little tidbit?
Well, that encounter was basically an encounter that involved 2 different points of view. You had the point of view of the young man who came on the show and talked about his own personal experiences, and then he also shared views that his uncles had shared with him, such as, if you find those folded clothes on the side of the road, then look out, because someone obviously must have undressed and then shapeshifted into the form of a werewolf, and then they obviously pose a danger. So yeah, he wasn't that eyewitness wasn't saying that that was his own opinion, that he knew that to be fact, and he formed that opinion over the years. No, he was just coming forward and saying that his uncles had told him that. So, yeah, I mean, he was pointing towards an experience that sounded to me like it was a flesh and blood entity, but his uncles obviously were apparently of the mindset that it must have been a true werewolf that they were dealing with. So, yeah, it's apples and oranges.
That's what it means. Okay, I have to go back and listen to that. I think I might have actually heard part of that one. I mean, there's a few that I've listened to that were pretty popular. I think that whole folded clothes thing. I remember listening to a J.C. Johnson interview where he was talking about how he thinks that not all of them, but some of these creatures are
demonic entities.
No, he said, well, yeah, but he said that some of these creatures are people that have shapeshifted and they were stuck. Like he says that in one of his shows. Like me and you've talked about that.
Yeah. Okay. What's your take on that, Vic?
Oh, that's out of my area of quote unquote expertise. Yeah, no one's an expert on this topic, but I'm not really sure what to make of that. I mean, I'd have to accept the idea that there are people who can actually transform into the form of a werewolf. So I don't really know what
so
to
you're
make of
admitting that you believe in werewolves.
Well,
no, I don't. I'd have to actually see that to believe that. But
well, Vic,
it's possible.
There was a guy that sent me a video, and he danced around naked for. You know, I'm talking about it, Rondo.
Yeah.
He danced around naked for like a minute and a half, and then ran off the screen. And then a dog ran across the screen like it had been shoved onto the screen. You know, kind of looked like a German Shepherd. I mean, you know, this guy obviously could change into a German Shepherd. He just couldn't do it on the camera because he was shy about changing.
Camera shy, right?
Yeah, but he could get nude, but changing in front of people, this is a little much. It's a private thing, dude.
No, I just found it really interesting, that little tidbit that his uncles would, mention folded clothes and whatnot. And do you think it's possible that gentleman's uncles may have encountered someone who dealing with the dark arts, like this, very much like the skinwalkers? The Navajo people have that legend of the skinwalker, and it's usually a shaman dealing with black magic and so on and so forth. Do you think it's possible that maybe his uncles could have had run-ins with werewolves, which being people who are dealing with black magic?
Yeah, I'd say it's possible. Anything's possible. I mean, you talk about all the eyewitnesses who you guys have interviewed and you share their stories on your show. I mean, I think a lot of them sound pretty credible to me, and maybe there is something to their stories. I'm not going to dismiss out of hand the possibility that there are things out there, such as demons, who maybe they can possess people and somehow, some way, give them the ability to transform from the form of a human over into the form of a beast, of a werewolf. Maybe it's possible. I guess it is possible. If demons actually do exist, then pretty much I guess you have to accept the fact that anything is possible. So, no, I'm not going to dismiss that out of hand, but to buy into that wholeheartedly, yeah, that's something I would actually have to see to be able to say, okay, well, yeah, it definitely is real. But that's my take on that.
Definitely take it with a grain of salt kind of attitude. That's kind of the way I like to approach it myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's too many people that have I can't dismiss it all. I just can't, because there's so many stories that I get. And what I look for is threads.
Yeah.
Common threads. I'll get, and Armando, Anthony's in the studio. My wife can tell you, my brother can tell you, all the people that are in my inner circle that do this with me, Vic. At any given time, there have been people with me to do these interviews and talk to these people. And one thing that everybody can tell you is that when I get a really weird story, I will kind of push it to the back burner as a miscellaneous file until I get another one that's similar. Then I connect the thread. I'm like, that's a common thread. And one of the things I don't do is I said, oh, you had a Dogman encounter, because that puts it in automatically in an arena for them to, whatever. And it shapes what they're going to tell you. And I don't tell people, oh, you saw a werewolf or you saw a gargoyle. Oh, I know what that was. You saw the rake or whatever they call it. I'm never going to do that, because I just let them tell me. And when I talk to them, I say, you had a strange encounter with something. Can you tell me about it? I never how do you say, preface it, I guess. I never start it. Like, I
Right,
never
you don't lead them down a certain
path.
I
don't set the stage for it by giving them speculation. And there are people that do that. There are researchers that do that. They'll go and they'll talk to someone and be like, you have a Dogman problem. It's out here and I'll tell you what it is. And that's blah, blah, blah. And we actually talked to somebody who was like, he had talked to another individual, and that individual, who I don't really think is very credible, but anyway, it's my opinion. He told that person, "Oh, you have a Dogman. That's exactly what that is. That's a Dogman." And then blah 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 blah. And then you don't know that that's what that is. I mean, you have no idea what that is. This guy could be, we don't know. I mean, you have no clue. And this person's already like giving them, why don't you just give it a name and tell us it's a male or female and tell us what its favorite breakfast cereal is while you're at it, because you seem to know everything, because that's obviously what this guy was doing. And then this particular individual wanted that person to pay them for services rendered for telling them, and then said, "I'll come out there and I'll shoo it away," or I guess how he said it, like he'll come and he'll help him deal with it. Well, of course that never happened.
Kind of like an exterminator exterminating cockroaches or something.
Sounds like to me the person doesn't really believe in what they're doing. They are taking people's money and they're telling people that they can do this and do that, and they're not really doing anything. I mean, it's like when my house had all kinds of spiritual things going on, and I never invited any of these psychics. I had other friends and people that brought psychics, and I had an ex-girlfriend that was like, "This woman's a witch and she can tell you all this stuff, and she's so smart, and she told me she knew my middle name," or some baloney. I was like, okay, fine. So she comes in there and she was right. She pinpointed some stuff, and I'm like, okay, man, what can you do for us? Well, I'll burn this sage and dance around like, Stevie Nicks, and then I'm going to leave. That's all she did. She did absolutely nothing for me. I'm like, okay, thank you. You can leave. Please don't ever come back, because you probably brought some stuff with you and you made the house smell bad, like patchouli and sage. Thank you. But this particular person, and Vic, you actually know this individual that was trying to con this I don't know what you would call him, a witness of ours, and tried to take money from them. And so I'm not going to get into who it was and what they did or whatever, because I'm not going to disparage anybody, but I just lost complete respect for any respect I had for that person. I was just like, really? That's really cute, because, this person's got a serious problem, and they cannot communicate very well. Like they have an accent. They have a hard time communicating. So it's not like they're not comfortable going on your show and talking about what happened. They can write it, So they reached out to us and we talked to them, and it was unfortunate that this person had taken money from them and just told them exactly what was going on, what was wrong with their property, sight unseen, like just basically saying, "Oh yeah, that's a Dogman. Yeah. And this is what you got to do. And let me deal with it, 'cause I'm an expert," And so when you have somebody that's doing that kind of stuff, and then that made that person balk at having any kind of experiences with any sort of researchers for like a good year and a half, until finally they reached out to me and said, "Hey, you seem like a good guy," whatever. Boy, were they wrong about that. No, I'm just kidding. They were just like, "You seem like a good guy," that whatever. And they reached out to me and we talked to this person, and we gained a wealth of knowledge from doing that investigation. But I can tell you right now, there are people out there that do prey on these people that just like with the ghost hunters and things like that, there's people that prey on them. They'll charge you a bunch of money to come and set up equipment and stuff. And I can't believe people would even pay for that. Like, to tell you what, like we captured an EVP, listen very closely, and it goes, bleh. And then you're like, "Did you hear it? It says it is your dead grandmother and it needs you to pay a $69.95. Listen to it again. Bleh." And then you're like, "Well, thank you, pay me." And they literally do that. I mean, like that's what they do. And they'll set up equipment, take pictures of dust and call it orbs. And that, but there are people that are doing that now with the Dogman. They will go out to people's property and tell them, "You know what you need to do? You need to set some beef jerky out there and then set up a trap and blah, blah, blah." And it's just unbelievable. I don't know that this gentleman on episode whatever was doing that. I don't know that that's what his uncles were doing or whatever. But just to say that, "Oh, it's a werewolf and then we're going to go out there and kill it." I mean, who knows? Because you don't even know what it is. none of us know what's really, like the thing I like about you, Vic, is since day one, since we've communicated, you have never told me, oh, I know what this is. I'm, and then you've never given me like any hard, concrete, like what you think, because saying like, I really believe this is what it is. You have not done that because you don't know what it is. And you have interviewed 1,000 people, like thousands of people. I mean, like bunches of people, and still don't know. We still don't know.
Not to mention all the written accounts you get on your website, Vic. I mean, I can only imagine it's a nightmare trying to go through all of those encounters and reading some of the ones that are a bit disjunct and, unintelligible. How do you do it? Well,
that's your thing, Sal. Like, you have a problem with grammar.
I'm sorry.
Sal is a grammar person.
I'm a grammar nut.
He is bad, very grammar, and he will I can't read this, and he'll just give it to me to read it, and I'm like, it is a very long paragraph run-on sentence, yes. But you know what? Some of these people, when they're writing this stuff, I think they're reliving it. Some of these people are reliving it, and they're not thinking about periods and commas and capitalization. They're just like typing and Vic, when I typed my story to you, it was hard because I'm not good at typing and I'm not good at, writing and typing, whatever. But you were able to read it. But I remember writing it and reliving it in my head. The emotion was there, and the first time I told you the story was not on the air. And I was nervous and there was anxiety. Like I told you, I had nightmares for years about it. And I don't know, man. I think dealing with it as much as I have over these last several years has made me a lot more comfortable with the subject. But I still don't really listen to a lot of shows about it just because I don't want to trigger like another episode of something, And so I'll listen to people's encounters and I'll take that, with me. But I will not, and I still to this day, I will not look or read or listen to anything Dogman related and then go to bed. I have to unwind. How do you say it? Like,
wind down.
Yeah, I have to watch like Parks and Recreation or The Office or something funny. Preferably, I'll tell my wife, look, let's watch something funny because I just read 3 or 4 stories and I don't want to, because I'm paranoid of like going to sleep or whatever. I mean, if it's like one of those goofy shows on channels or whatever where there's just some silly story or something, I can deal with it. But if it's something like someone's recounting their actual encounter or something like that, I can't deal with that.
So that brings a question in mind, Vic. I mean, you're always getting this Dogman material, and you just heard, Wolf explain his whole take on it. How is it for you? Since, you've got tons of this material and it's on your website, you've got all these episodes. How do you work through all that?
Well, when you're exposed to it the way I've been over the years, I don't go to bed and have nightmares after even finding out about the worst experiences, the worst encounters. I feel really bad for the people who have these encounters, and I just sit there sometimes. Sometimes I'll wake up at like maybe 4 a.m. and I'll check emails that came in overnight, and seems like that's when the creepiest Dogman encounters come in, by the way. But anyway, I'll check my emails and maybe one that came in at maybe 2 a.m., 3 a.m. I'll read that one, and it was a really particularly creepy encounter. And I'm taken back by it, and I'm thinking, whoa, that poor person. I can only imagine what they must have gone through and are continuing to go through after having an experience like that. But no, it doesn't haunt me, and I don't have nightmares about that. Maybe it's because I've been exposed over the years to so many of them. I don't know what it is for sure, but yeah, it just doesn't affect me that way. Like I said, I just feel so sorry for the people who have to experience something like that.
And folks at home listening, I know a secret about Mr. Cundiff, and I know why he does not get weirded out or freaked out.
What is that?
He's a werewolf.
Oh, he's a werewolf?
Yeah, I've heard that one before, too.
Oh, I have, too.
It funny you should mention that you get a lot of these really strange encounters from people in the middle of the night, right during the proverbial witching hour.
Witching hour.
That's
Absolutely.
Interesting. That's very interesting, Vic.
Yeah, we talked about that the guy from France who sent me the
Yeah.
mirror, and I woke up at 4 o'clock, literally 3:30, 4 o'clock. And then my little dog, she's just this little lovable dog. She comes jumping into the room, and I'm like, ah! And I jumped up and I kicked at her, and she like ran back out of the room. And it was,
All 4.5 pounds of her.
she's literally like, well, she's probably about 7 pounds. She's a little bitty thing, and she was just like, hey, what's up? And I was just like, ah! Because I was reading about this demonic mirror thing, and I was just like, oh my God, like, there's nobody awake. There's like 2 people in the house besides me, and nobody was awake, and I was like in there reading in the dark, and it scared the heck out of me, dude. And and usually like the this is what's funny about me. The difference between me and my wife is that she is terrified of demons and ghosts type stuff, the paranormal stuff that we deal with a lot. She's just like, oh my God, she freaks out, Me, I'm just like, dude, this is crazy. But I'm not like unnerved, like completely unnerved, because I've dealt with it. But if I'm out near the woods and I'm having, you better believe if I hear a twig snap, that's a dog, man. I'm gonna die. I'm already like in the car. I'm like Scooby and Shaggy, dude. Like I'm not about to be. No, dude. I'm sorry, man. I've seen it, and I've always thought, this thing. What if it's still out there, And,
well, I mean, you're dealing with a flesh and blood creature, which you had the not so great pleasure of seeing, just quite a few feet away, and it's not something that happens every day. What were your first thoughts on that, Vic, when you read Josh's encounter? What were you thinking? I mean, what went through your mind?
You mean besides him being full of... No, I'm just kidding.
I was just going to say,
Good
Vic's
one,
like,
Vic.
God,
was
this
right on
guy's
time.
full of crap, but
It's
this will
right
make
on
good radio.
That was right on time, Vic.
Yeah.
But please, seriously, what was going through your mind when you read his encounter?
Wow, that happened so long ago that I couldn't really tell you. I mean, since I read his report, there have been so many eyewitnesses who have contacted me. Yeah,
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you what my thoughts were when I was reading that. I don't know.
Maybe other than, hey, this one is definitely worth pursuing?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think if I think they're credible, then I think they're all worth pursuing. And I still
Yes.
pursue ones that I've got a feeling that they probably aren't credible. But,
Yes.
when I started doing this, I made myself a promise that even if I've got one that comes across the desk that I don't think is genuine, I'm still going to honor their integrity, because I don't want to take a chance on turning someone away who is telling the truth, but for whatever reason, how they delivered it, maybe they're not a good storyteller, or they just can't represent their ideas well. I don't want to take a chance on turning someone away who is legit, who actually is a bona fide eyewitness. I don't want to turn someone like that away because I misread them. So I'd rather play the fool and then talk to them. And if they want to come on the show, bring them on the show and play the fool, or risk playing the fool because I just brought a huckster on. Then, like I said, turn them away because I want to save face. So, yeah, that's the stance I've taken on that since I began doing this.
Well, I think it's a testament to your integrity, and along those lines, like I said earlier, I'm a grammar Nazi. Folks, if you send your stories in and you're not the greatest writer and all that, we will still read your stories, and we will put them on and tell them as fast as we can get them on there.
I will read them because Sal he gets angry and confused when the punctuation's not there.
Oh no. But seriously though, it's I think it's amazing what you've been doing, Vic. It's just, I like it even till this day. I've listened to all your episodes, like I said before, and it's just, I can only imagine. I mean, how many accounts would you say you have, along with the videos, the podcast you have? How many encounters have you amassed?
Wow, I have no idea. Over the years, since I haven't been keeping track, yeah, there's no way to tell. I have no clue on that. You can only process so many of these encounters. People when they talk to me, they want me to, like when I come on shows, they want me to recount stories. Why don't you tell us about various Dogman encounters that have been submitted? Just tell us about some of these encounters. Make it story time. Well, when you deal with so many encounters over the years, it's really hard to do that. the facts just start to blur. This encounter is so similar to the one that you fielded maybe a year and a half ago that it's very hard to keep the facts straight between the two. So, yeah, that's why I have such a hard time with that, coupled with the fact that I'm definitely not a storyteller. But yeah, those two facts right there, that's why it's so hard for me to just sit there and recount stories.
So, Vic, you're not going to tell us a story? Come on, Vic. Tell us a story, Vic. Come on. Don't you have a story?
Well, I do have a question, and I totally can understand what you're getting at with, so many encounters that are similar, so many similarities. And I'm, my guess that you've probably amassed over 10,000 encounters. That's just my guess. And it may well be a lot more than that. I'm just guessing right now, but
What? Hold on. Where did you get this number from? You're just like 10,000 stories.
over all the years he's been doing this?
Are you talking about because you hacked into his computer?
No.
I'm just kidding. We're just kidding. Vic. We haven't done that yet. We're still trying, though.
So, no, seriously, though, I mean, what are the biggest things out of all the ones you read, and just what are some of the commonalities you find, related to the physical creature known as Dogman today?
Well, the commonalities are, well, most people, it seems to me like the ears. The eyes and the ears are what eyewitnesses notice first when they have a dogman encounter. The way they describe the eyes, the way they describe their ears, those two physical traits, those two seem to be the most consistently described from eyewitness to eyewitness. But yeah, I mean, the leg structure too, that's pretty consistent as well. But yeah, I mean, when you talk about something that looks in most cases the same way as this eyewitness saw, if you have several eyewitnesses, for example, who had an experience with a bear, the
Yes.
descriptions are going to match. I mean, if you're talking about a black bear or a grizzly bear, the descriptions are going to match if you're talking about whatever creature. So it always has gotten me. It's always made me laugh when you have people say, "Okay, well, yeah, dogman. This whole dogman thing it's got to be bunk because all the descriptions are so similar." Well, I'm thinking, well, come on now. I mean, if people are seeing things that look the same for the most part, which dogmen obviously have a lot of variances in their appearances, but if you're talking about a canine type dogman, then yeah, the appearance is only going to vary so much in a lot of cases. But anyway, I'm getting sidetracked here. Yeah, it just makes sense that all these eyewitnesses, when they describe what they saw, it only makes sense that they're going to describe, for the most part, the same thing.
Well, that's interesting, because that leads me to the next question: is what was going through your mind when you heard the different explanation, i.e., you heard predominantly, it seems to me, correct me if I'm wrong, that you heard about the canine style, the upright walking canine fully legs, digitigrade versus plantigrade. What were your thoughts when you found out there's this plantigrade dogman and had all these qualities and features similar to a Sasquatch? What went through your mind when you first come across that? Or
Well,
vice versa. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no problem. Well, number one, my thought at that time was, okay, yeah, we're talking about something that's commonly referred to as being a dogman, but it's clearly not the same thing as what people are describing with digitigrade style legs. Yeah, the appellation dogman, it doesn't describe what we're talking about very well here tonight, but that's basically all we have. So, yeah, I mean, you've got a lot of people understand. Yeah, I should put this out there because this is something that's lost on a lot of people in the cryptid community. Understand that there is a large group of people who, if you talk to them about seeing a dogman, they're not going to think canine type dogman. To them, the only kind of dogman that exists is a cryptid that's got hominid style legs. There was a podcast that, if I remember right, I think, yeah, Linda Godfrey did, where about halfway through Hawk Spearman, I love that guy, by the way. I was so sad to hear that he passed. But yeah, about halfway through that interview, Hawk Spearman called in and they basically had a verbal fisticuffs because he was convinced that a dogman did not have digitigrade style legs. It was basically a type 3. To him, that's what a dogman was. Linda, she was saying that no, dogmen have digitigrade style legs. They don't have hominid style legs. I got the impression that it was almost like she didn't know that there were cryptids out there with hominid style legs that are commonly referred to as being dogmen as well. I could be wrong about that, but listening to that interview, that's the impression I got. So, yeah, I wanted to put that out there because, like I said, there's so many people in the cryptid field who are interested in the topic of dogmen that don't realize that. You've got those two camps who basically go back and forth about the true identity of what a real dogman is.
So, Vic, I have a question for you. What is your opinion? Like, 'cause you have gotten so many reports of Dogman, you've gotten so many reports of Bigfoot. How did the two compare? What are the similarities, and what are the differences? Because I guess what I mean is like behavior, and also aggressiveness. Like, I mean, I know that I've heard some really aggressive Bigfoot stories, but I've also heard like Dogman just be completely vicious. Like, what are your thoughts? Like, if you had to run into one or the other, which one would it be? And like, how would you, like, who would win in a fight? I had people asking me that on the Paranormal Round Table group.
Yeah, in the group, yeah.
They were like, who would win in a fight? You know, I think that just depends on the size and the temperament and the of the individual and probably the age. But like, in your opinion, what do you think, Vic, about all that?
Well, I don't think there are all that many similarities between the two. I mean, dogmen, in my opinion, they have a different MO than Sasquatch. Yeah, dogmen, in a lot of cases, their MO is to terrify you as an eyewitness to within an inch of your life. And once they've done that, once they can see that they've done that, okay, mission accomplished, move on. But with Sasquatch, it seems like in a lot of cases, in most cases, they're just interested in making a living out there. Yeah, there are Sasquatch that will shadow you in the woods and whatnot and make you really shaken up. But yeah, they don't do a lot of the things that dogmen do for what I just highlighted. I don't think their MO is to terrify you to within an inch of your life the way dogmen do. As far as anything else, there aren't really, in my opinion, I don't think there's much else that you could draw comparisons. I don't think there's really much else that you could compare between the two. I mean, there's so many differences between the two. I think it's almost like apples and oranges.
Yeah, I agree with that part. I do though think that there are times when Bigfoot can be very aggressive, but I think it's because people either stumble on in a territorial thing or they have young in the area. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's reasons. I think dogmen just go about doing things a completely different way than Bigfoot. But the thing is that they are both a type of cryptid, and they are both like commonly seen in general same vicinities. You know what I mean? There'll be an area where there's dogmen and Bigfoot activity, but they'll be kind of on opposite ends from one another. Like but their territories can overlap. You know, you will see them in the same vicinity or within a couple miles of each other. You know what I mean? The LBL comes to mind. Out here in Texas, Devil's Backbone, we've gotten a few encounters of both species, but we tend to get the Bigfoot in one area and the Dogman in another area. And we drove out there and we went through these areas where it was very clear that the Dogmen were on one side and Bigfoot was on the other. At least to me. Like, even the people that live out there probably don't even really notice it. They're probably not, they're just, this is what happened and they told us and that was it. But I do believe that there are clear boundaries for them, As far as like who would win in a fight, I've heard a couple different times of them clashing, but I don't really know what to make of it. I mean, I can't really. I think the two of the main ones that stand out in my mind, one which I have not told on because I'm saving it for an episode, but there is one that I did tell on your show, but it didn't seem to be there wasn't a clear winner of like who was the baddest.
Who's the baddest kid on the block?
Yeah, and I think it was just like just territorial thing. Have you gotten stories of that, Vic, of dogmen fighting with Bigfoot?
Not many. No, most of the stories where Dogman and Sasquatch were reported in the same area involved the Sasquatch just moving on after the Dogman moved into that area. So, yeah, that was that. Not, in most cases, it's not a situation where an eyewitness talks about a fight or anything like that.
Hmm.
But understand, I get asked that question too. Who would win a fight between a dogman and a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch? And my answer is basically what you said. It would just depend on the dogman and the Sasquatch involved in the fight. I mean, are we talking about an alpha Sasquatch and a juvenile dogman or vice versa or two alphas? It just depends. Understand though, even a 200-pound man, 250-pound man, 300-pound man, he's going to have his hands full trying to contend with a 120-pound canary dog or Rottweiler. So, you can be a lot bigger, but it just depends on the weaponry that you bring to bear, that you're equipped with. If you're talking about a dog man that's maybe 800 pounds up against a 1,300-pound Sasquatch, well, yeah, Sasquatch that size is going to be awfully strong, but an 800-pound dog man's going to be awfully strong too. But he's going to bring maybe 4-inch, 5-inch claws, maybe longer to the fight, and also powerful jaws with huge teeth. So, and maybe more quickness than what the Sasquatch has got. It's just hard to say. So, I'm not really sure what to think on that. All I can say is I think it depends on the dogman and the Sasquatch involved in the fight.
Well, I know the Canaris is an incredibly dangerous dog. A buddy of ours that he was from South Africa, and he had one. He had 2 Rhodesian Ridgebacks, and he had a Canaris, and it was an incredibly intimidating animal. I can tell you that right now. He moved up to Montana, but yeah, I didn't like going out to his place. I handled dogs when I was younger, and I had a Rottweiler jump me before I got my bite suit on my, in my arm or whatever, and he belonged to an individual who used to work with us, and Anthony, you know who I'm talking about. He's sitting right here in the studio. But yeah, there was a guy that used to work with us, and I think you actually, didn't he let you play with one of the dogs and train with it or whatever?
Yeah, I got to wear
the bite suit. Yeah, well, I didn't have that on, and this one was he was a particularly cantankerous animal, and he lunged at me, and luckily I had Kevlar gloves, and I grabbed him by his jaw and kind of slung him off of me. But he just went for the arm. If he would have hit me in the chest, and at that time I probably weighed about 280, I'm pretty sure he would have knocked me off my feet. And I had a Mastiff who was a 130-pound beast. I mean, his head was huge. A lot of my friends went out and got big dogs because of Ivan. Ivan was such a bad dude. And I just remember one time in particular, he got into a scrap with a Rottweiler. And this Rottie was a long-haired, I don't know if they call it a German Rot or something. Like he had a long hair. Mm-hmm. And it was a friend of ours' dog. And he jumped out the back of his of his vehicle, and they just started scrapping. But luckily for Ivan, because I always fitted him with a really nice spiked collar, and the Rottie didn't. He just had a chain around his neck, and he tried to grab Ivan by the throat, and he couldn't because of the whatever
spikes.
Yeah, and Ivan ended up sliding under him and kind of roll. He had this thing he would do where he would roll, and it was just crazy, and then he would flip him. And then he'd be on top of them, and they'd just be yelping, and he'd be shoving them across the ground. And I just remember having to go over there with the other guy and trying to tear them apart. It was like, man, dude, let me tell you, I don't want to get in between those jaws, dude, but I had to. As I've gotten bigger and stronger, now, I mean, I'm not as worried. I wouldn't be as worried about a dog. Dogs don't really scare me at all. But the thought of just a dog, a 150-pound dog, can annihilate a 300-pound man. So what you're talking about, I've seen it. How dogs, what they can do. They have some considerable weapons that they can, that their jaws are just unreal. And then you take a dog man, and like you say, add human level intelligence, right, Sal?
Mm-hmm.
And its ability to do math and science. I'm just kidding. I'm just joking.
No, it's the ability to strategize.
I'm kidding, because Sal, and I think Chris even believe that they can drive cars and fly spaceships.
No, I
and
didn't
stuff
say
like
that.
You were kind of alluding to that.
No,
But we're
no,
going to
no.
leave it at that, because I don't believe that they can do taxes and all that. But anyway.
Well, no, it's why do they need to do taxes?
Well, you know what? They smell bad and they live out in the woods, dude. That tells you right there they're not as smart as we are. So, honestly.
It's all about necessity, brother.
Indoor plumbing. You know what? Opposable thumb, indoor plumbing, electricity. You know what? That's why they're in the woods and we're in a house. That's the difference.
Well, I'll say it like my mother always said. If God had meant for dogs, and in this case Dogman, to live in houses, he would have taught them to build it. They don't need it.
They do need it.
Well, they don't need a house.
If they're gonna have an empire again, like you claim, like they had this.
That's the Cenocephaly, right, Vic?
Okay. Well. but you said earlier though that you believe that's what they are.
They're the feral remnants.
The feral remnants, and that's very possible.
Possible, who knows? I mean,
but Vic doesn't believe that.
No. I mean, Vic and I differ on that. And hey, it's no one knows exactly. Which leads to this question, though, Vic. You guys were talking about the physical capabilities, and of course, great points putting it out there because, Dogman brings so many weapons to bear to the fight. And of course, the Sasquatch is just brutally just a monster with the strength, right? We were talking a few shows ago, I don't know, previous episode, we were discussing about, the Dogmen are quadrupedal and the Sasquatch can go quadrupedal. And I think we came to the conclusion, and our hypothesis is that, and Wolf first put it out there, and I tend to agree. He says the Sasquatch spend more time upright and can get down and get by quadrupedal. And he said, well, the Dogmen are primarily quadrupedal and get up on two legs whenever they need to, but don't make it a habit of always doing that. What's your take on that? Do you think we're kind of off base on that one?
Do I think you're off on how much time on average a Dogman spends in a quadrupedal position versus a Sasquatch?
Yes.
Wow. Well, as far as that goes, all we can do is just guess. I mean, I think Dogmen, for the most part, spend almost all their time on all fours, but if they need to intimidate someone, an eyewitness, in other words, or if maybe they need to sniff the air like a bear would, it's obviously advantageous to get up on their back legs and get their noses higher up into the air to be able to smell scents more accurately. Maybe that's the only time when they do walk about or get up onto their back legs. But yeah, that's just a matter of me guessing. I really have no clue what percentage of time either one of them would spend walking around quadrupedally or bipedally for that matter.
Well, that being said, the stories that you get, does it tend to be like the Dogman, most of the stories that you get, do they tend to start off quadrupedal and then they end up bipedal?
Yeah, almost every encounter does seem to start off with the eyewitness seeing the Dogman down on all fours, and then when it's obvious that it would be advantageous to the Dogman to stand up onto its back legs to intimidate that eyewitness, that's when they do it. So, yeah, that's why I think for the most part they just go around on all fours because, number one, it helps to spread the weight. It's easier for them to get around that way. It requires less energy. There are a lot of advantages to moving around that way. So that's why I think that's how they go around for the most part, unless they, for whatever reason, need to go up onto their back legs.
Yeah, so primarily quadrupeds, bipedal whenever the situation calls for it. And so would you agree that Sasquatch are the opposite when you compare the two? Primarily biped? Or
No, I wouldn't. No, I think for the most part, Sasquatch, they also go around for the most part in a quadrupedal fashion. When you're moving about in a quadrupedal fashion, especially if you're running, the limbs are more specialized. Take a horse, for example, when it runs, a dog, when it runs. Same thing. The forelegs, for the most part, are catching the weight when the dog or the horse is running. They lunge with their back legs and catch their weight with their forelegs, and then the back legs, for the most part, are driving forward. That's why a quadrupedal creature, in almost every case, not all, but almost every case, is going to be faster than a bipedal creature. Now, you do have exceptions like ostriches, who, or that for whatever reason, are as fast as they are, but because of that specialization, I mean, it only makes sense that a quadrupedal creature would have a lot of advantages moving about that a bipedal one wouldn't, except for the ability to carry things with their forelimbs.
That's a good point. That makes sense. Definitely gonna lock that information away in the memory bank. That's good information. I appreciate it, Vic. I like that. I like your take on it.
Oh, no problem. Well, when it comes to things like that, I try to think my way through, okay, what's the advantage here? Why would a creature do this or do that? And that's a good explanation why Sasquatch would make most of the movements that they make in a quadrupedal form. So it makes sense. I figure maybe there is something to it.
Yeah, like I said, for the most part, I would agree with you. I would maybe, a few different things as far as a few aspects would be different, in my opinion, other than thinking of what the Sasquatch is taking pretty much how Aristotle, he's the father of taxonomy. He's the one that got it started. And then, of course, over the course of time, you had other scientists that refined the process and classification system up to what it is today. But how he started the classification system is by the characteristics of the creature or whatever it was that he was looking at. And since they look so much in the way they're shaped, like us, and of course we're primarily 99.9% of the time bipedal. We only get down on all fours when we need to, and that's very few. But I think the whole bipedal thing and versus quadrupedal, they definitely have that upper body strength and build to be on all fours a lot more than what people would think. And it's just I don't know. I would guess I guess if it was a percentage, if it was a ratio, I would say it maybe 40% bipedal, 60% quadruped, whereas a Dogman maybe 75-80% quadruped, 20% biped, and of course those situations being. But it always amazes me that when people talk about how fast they move on all fours. Now that is amazing.
There's a video of one in Round Rock.
Yeah,
and it looks like it could be either one.
Yeah,
I can't tell from the upper body. It almost looks like a Dogman, but then it almost looks like it could be a Bigfoot too. Because the one that I saw, it was in the ditch, and then it stood up on two legs, ran across the road. It looked like once it got to the grass part, almost like it went back down, but I couldn't be for sure, 100% for sure. And it came down the alley, whatever, and between the two houses, and it was on two legs, but I think it was to look bigger and more menacing. So I can't tell you really in like what I saw in person. As far as what I saw, I didn't see a lot of quadrupedal movement, which was why I think it was so terrifying too, because it did not look like a dog. Look nothing like a dog. And speaking of video, Vic, you have actually seen a video of one of these things.
I have. Before we touch on that, though, do you mind if I put a button on what we were just talking about? There's something that I probably should put out there that I forgot to mention.
No, we don't. Just answer the question, Vic, or get off my show. All right?
Wow.
No, sure. Go ahead, Vic.
Seriously.
Tough crowd. I'm just messing with you. Go ahead.
No problem. No, what I was going to say is, before Josh rudely interrupted me, I was going to say is that...
Touché.
As far as what I was going to say is, don't lose sight of the fact that we actually are built, we're designed to walk quadrupedally. There's a reason why we have so many back problems. Humans have so many back problems, and that's the fact that doctors will tell you we are not designed to walk around on two legs. We are designed to go about quadrupedally, and that is why humans have so many back problems. Because of, when you think about all the advantages, like I said earlier, that going around on all fours offers versus on two legs, it only makes sense that that's how they would move about for the most part, unless there was a certain situation where maybe they would need to look over corn or something that was taller. Then yeah, that makes sense. It would make sense that they would stand up onto two legs and take a look and see what they needed to see and then drop back down. But yeah, I just wanted to put that out there for you, something else to consider.
And when they stand up, there is a popping noise. I did not hear it, but I get that quite often. Like the Hernandez's.
Yeah, Hernandez Ranch. Yeah,
they did report that. Shane, he reported that the popping noise was very prevalent.
Was a common thing when they encountered them.
Common, yeah. And so, like I said, I have not, but I know a lot of people who have actually, and I know these people firsthand. They do report the popping noise. I think it was what was that?
I don't know.
It's a computer noise.
It's the ghosts.
Oh, my sound guy decided to walk away from his computer, and now we're hearing noises from the computer just farted. Thank you, Anthony. I appreciate that.
Hey, it was a computer ghost.
The ghost of a computer. Yeah.
There we go. Ghost in the machine.
Well, I know that the video that you saw, Vic, and it was very convincing of, to that. Was that enough to make you know, like 100%, hey, I believe in these? Like, if you were not a believer beforehand?
Oh, definitely. Definitely, without a doubt. Yeah, if I was a skeptic before I saw that, then I definitely would not have been a skeptic afterwards. No, that definitely was not fake. That was the real deal. Yeah, people, they hear me talk about that video that I saw and they get upset about the fact that it's not out there. I don't have it posted on dogmanencounters.com. Why not, Vic? Why didn't you post that? Well, I make it clear when I have done shows in the past, or I made it clear when I've done shows in the past that yeah, I didn't have permission to share that video in a public format like that. And, I take the trust that I have between an eyewitness and myself very seriously. If an eyewitness puts something out there for me to look at or review, if they don't want that put out and shared with the public, then I'm not going to do that. I mean, if you have someone who's been ridiculed by their family and friends, they've up and above that, they've had to go through a huge, horrible experience, i.e., a dogman encounter. The last thing I want to do is to cause them further grief by putting this information out there when they don't want me to do that. So, yeah, that's what's behind that. But no, to talk about that video, yeah, there was a guy, if I remember correctly, he lived in I think Eastern California, pretty close to the Sierra Nevada mountains, or maybe the foothills of the Sierra Nevadas, but he found out that there was a dogman or dogmen plural that were frequenting this area. And when he found that out, he decided to stake this more expensive game cam to a tree trunk and then hang some bait about 5 feet away from that camera lens on a limb. And he did that, and I saw in broad daylight this dog man just comes into the view of the camera and it's going for the bait. Now, understand, this isn't one of the cheaper game cams where it snaps photos. No, this was actually one of the more expensive ones that actually could film. So, yeah, I got to see this dog man in broad daylight come walking into the view of the camera lens, and I got to see it from the back, from the front, because yeah, it did go for the bait, and then it turned around. So I got to see it was clear enough where you could almost make out individual hairs. So yeah, I mean, I saw the whole thing, and yeah, that was not faked. That was the real deal. Now, again, that's going to make some people frustrated because there's a real hunger out there. As you guys know, there's a real hunger for dogman evidence. Well, I want to see evidence, Vic. I want to see a good picture of a real dogman, Vic. I want to see this. I want to hear a good vocalization. That's a bona fide dogman vocalization. Well, just because you haven't seen it, that doesn't mean that it's not out there. And just because I've seen it, that doesn't mean that I'm going to be at liberty to put it out there for you to view and make up your own opinion about. So yeah, I mean, that's the whole story on that video that keeps popping up and people keep asking about.
Wow, that's amazing. I guess this brings up a few questions, and my mind's already racing now that you mentioned and gave us basically the rundown of what's in the video. First question I have: would you say that the video that you viewed, which you must keep private because you weren't given permission to release it or share it with anyone, would you say that this video and the the Dogman is the subject of the video. Would you say it's as clear as the Patterson Gimlin film? Because I saw the Patterson Gimlin film when I was 8 years old. Growing up around animals and everything else, when I saw that creature on that video, I said, that's a real creature because I was watching the muscles work. And when you grow up as a kid around animals, farms, ranches, you study the animals, you see how they move and everything else. You can tell when there's a fake and when something's real. So would you say it's on that level?
Oh, it's well above that.
Wow.
Understand, we're talking about footage where the subject is between the camera lens and bait that's hung 5 feet away from the camera lens. It walked between that bait and the camera lens for me. Well, not for me, but I saw it walk between the bait and the camera lens. And yeah, I saw it from its front, I saw it from its back. And if you're going to make a caricature, if you have someone in a costume where it's not real eyes that you're looking at, it's not real teeth that you're looking at, it's not a real nose that you're looking at, it's going to have a certain look where you're going to say, okay, I'm not so sure. But in the same way, I guess the best way to put it is, when you're looking at real eyes, when you see them move and you see certain qualities about them, and they're facing the camera from less than 5 feet away, when you're looking at real eyes. When you're looking at a real mouth that's open, when it's the real deal. And what I saw, you can't compare that to the Patterson Gimlin film because Patty was so far away from the camera lens. No, this is apples and oranges. Now understand, no, people ask me as well, okay, do you still have that? Why haven't you published that video? Well, I don't have that video. I never had possession of it. When I saw that video, the person who actually owned that video, they put it onto YouTube as an unlisted video. Either a private video or was it an unlisted? It was one of the two. It was either a private video or an unlisted video. I can't remember which one, but they sent me the link to it. So I had the ability to view it, but I never possessed it. So after I had viewed it, then they took it off of YouTube. So I don't have the ability to put it out there for the public if I wanted to, which I don't want to. I didn't want to. I never have wanted to because that person, they told me that they didn't want it put out there. So, yeah, that's the story. That's the whole story behind that video that I've talked about before.
Another question on that video also, Vic. Did this Dogman ever notice the camera, or was he too focused on the bait?
No, it never did seem to notice the camera. It never did look directly at the lens. It looked close to the lens. Maybe it looked at the top of the camera. I don't know. I don't know how big game cams like that are that actually can film instead of snap photos. But no, it never did look right at the camera lens. That much I can tell you.
So how long ago was this?
Oh, wow. I think it was probably about 4 years ago.
So yeah, the more expensive cameras from about 4 years ago, if you're getting the fancy ones, would probably been approximately, the dimensions would probably been about 8 to 9 inches by, all the way around, give or take, and a little bit extra, a little thicker than the average ones, just because of the fact our technology wasn't as good 4 years ago as it is today. And of course, and if you're going to video and everything, would have required a little more hardware, for lack of better words, in order to be able to have one that accomplishes that. I bet, the gentleman probably dropped about $300 on that super fancy one, maybe more. It's hard to tell, but wow, that just, I wished I could have seen that video because, man, that is, Vic, consider yourself lucky. You got a once in a lifetime view of something extraordinary.
Well, a lot of people have said that, but don't lose sight of the fact that you can't unsee something. When you get that good of a look at a Dogman, you can't unsee that. It was pretty unnerving, to say the least. It was something.
Wow. Was this the canine style or the?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Wow. I mean, that's amazing. That's just, I can empathize. I can totally understand about seeing things that you can never unsee. Trust me, I know that all too well. So that brings me up to another thing because, you saw this, you saw that amazing video, and I had the privy of seeing a picture of a Dogman from a lady.
A good one.
Yeah, sent from a lady in Minnesota. Now that was pretty unnerving, just seeing that still shot.
Mm-hmm. There were actually there was like 3 or 4, and but we only have one now,
Yeah.
which is weird. I don't even know what happened to those other ones, but I've discussed this with you, I believe, Vic, off air. But there was a woman from Minnesota, and I know there's more than one researcher probably knows this story, but cannot locate her now. She's like, the address is whatever
Off the grid.
Yeah, she's
for lack of better
like,
words.
we don't know what happened to her, but I have a photo. I had a photo. Most of the time when you see these videos, I think it's like the pareidolia thing or something. People are like, look at this. It's up in the bushes.
That picture.
Not that picture, but there's pictures of people that have these, they look like trees and bushes, and I don't even know what they're seeing. I don't see it. And it's like, well, that's a nice bush, but I don't really see the Dogman in it. I have seen a couple that look like you could see something inside of it. I've seen a couple compelling photos, but this photo that I shared with you, Armando, 4 years ago, 3 years ago?
3 years ago.
3 years ago. And that's one of the things that made me trust you too, because I said, if I show you these photos, you can absolutely not talk about it. And I won't be your friend. We won't talk, you know?
Yeah. It was a deal breaker.
Yeah. And so I just said, you got to keep your mouth shut. And I showed it to him. I absolutely showed it to him because it was given to me from somebody that corresponded with me. She was from Minnesota. And it was after episode 59, I think, 58, something like that. It was like the second or third time I was on your show.
58.
58, yeah. And you, Armando, were the absolutely only other person outside of my household that has seen those photos. And what it is, Vic, is this woman had one that was above, you could see it was like above her privacy fence. And the privacy fence was like, I don't know, was it like 6 foot probably?
It looked like a pretty tall one. It wasn't your standard 4 to 4.5 foot tall one. This one was tall. This was your standard privacy. Yeah. Hold on. I'm getting my sizes mixed up, but your standard privacy fence usually runs 6 foot or better.
6 foot, yeah. And this thing towered over it. And then there was one photo of it just sitting there, and you could see what looked like phalanges or something holding on to the wood. Then there was another photo where it was just looking down straight ahead. And then there was another photo. Yeah, I'm getting to that. He's doing the mouth. Yeah. And then, but then there was another photo with the mouth wide open. And it was like, oh my freaking, it was unfreaking believable.
It was unnerving.
This is actually the first time that I will have ever said this on air, that I do have that picture. I have seen, I think at this point, there's probably only been 6 or 7 of us that have seen it now. And that woman asked me not to, you know, and I don't know, you know, you want to keep you want to keep their, like, you want to do the right thing by these people. And if you deny their trust by, you know, and even though I don't have contact with her now, I don't, you know I don't know what happened to her. I'm a little worried too, you know, about ever actually releasing anything, because I don't know what will happen. You know what I mean? I don't know what the government knows and what they don't know. I don't really want to talk about all that, but that is a question, and that will lead us into another question I have that somebody in the Paranormal Round Table group actually voiced to me to ask. What do you to make of these Dogman encounters that we're getting that sound very much like government tampering? Like there's the Dogman, okay, that they look like they're a giant werewolf looking creature, of course, whatever. But then there's these really big headed ones, and I believe that
they call them the fat heads.
The fat heads. And now the story we got out of Hyco, Texas.
Yeah.
When the guy said when it stood up, it was like 8 feet tall, and his head was gigantic. He said it was just like a humongous head with this humongous jaws, and it was just chewing away as it stood straight up. That sounds like some sort of like what they call soldier Dogman or whatever they want to call them. I don't know. Do you believe, Vic, that there has been some sort of somebody has genetically manipulated these things, or is that just a natural thing?
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if there have been agencies out there who have genetically manipulated these things or tried to create them somehow by creating some sort of chimera between a wolf and maybe some other type of primate. I don't know, but yeah, it's possible. I think we definitely, well, I'm not going to say we definitely, but I wouldn't be surprised if we do have the technology to do that somehow, and at least to maybe in some form. But do I think that all dogmen are government creations? A lot of people, for whatever reason, they think that, okay, well, dogmen, they look so strange. Maybe the government or various governments, maybe that's how they came to be. And I definitely do not believe that. When you consider that the first documented dogman encounter that happened in 1853 in Wexford County, Michigan, I mean, yeah, we definitely did not have the technology back then to do anything like that. And I think that dogman encounters, they predate that. Look at Anubis. If you look at hieroglyphs in Egypt, in tombs of Anubis, maybe they saw dogmen way back then and they represented that on the walls of these various tombs. Maybe that's where the Anubis artifacts or hieroglyphs that is come from. But no, I don't think that all dogmen are government creations. To answer your question, I would be surprised if some are, though.
That's Vic, I'm with you on that whole thing because as far as first in the first place, as far as we humans today, for lack of better words, messing around doing we have animal husbandry here in the state of Texas, and I know I've mentioned it time and time again before that we created people created the Santa Gertrudis breed of cattle. And to break it down and put it in a nutshell, it was just a matter of crossbreeding certain types of cattle. They kept crossbreeding until they got this particular, all the traits they were looking for, and then they renamed it the Santa Gertrudis cattle, and now they are their own breed of cattle. And so, could someone out there, like say some government agencies do that? Yeah, I think that would be possible. It's kind of a slow process, but you would still be able to do it. The whole thing about the chimera, well, we do have the technology to do that. Was it a few years ago? I read an article where scientists, I believe it was either China or in Europe somewhere, maybe even the U.S. I can't remember. But what they did is they took some DNA from those jellyfish that glow, that live deep down in the darkest part of the ocean, and it helps them glow. They glow so that it helps them see, right? Or attract prey. Well, they took some of that DNA and spliced it into a kitten, and the resulting thing is when you looked at the kitten, you just looked, the kitten looked normal, but if you turn the lights down low or you turn it dark, it had a glow to it. So with that, just the fact that we were able to do that to a kitten, it's hard to tell. And this article it's quite a few years old now. So my position on the particulars as far as technological know-how to do that, I think we have it. I think we do. Now, I don't want to keep going on that one because, I think everybody's heard that. But I do have more questions for you, Vic, because, man, I can't get that video out of my head now that you mentioned it. Though I've never seen it, unfortunately for me, I can't get that out of my head. So, you mentioned that it didn't appear that the dogman noticed the camera. Now, what was the most unsettling part of that video when you were watching this creature just do its thing, going after that bait?
Oh, that's easy. The most unsettling aspect was the fact that you're getting such a clear view of something like that. I mean, you could see everything. So, yeah, that was by far and away the most unsettling part of it.
I mean, were you watching the muscles move in the whole 9 yards when it was doing its thing?
I was more focused on its eyes and teeth and things like that. I did look, because of how close it was to the camera and the positioning, I guess. I had a hard time seeing its muscles move. I don't remember if I actually could see muscles moving under that fur that it had,
Oh,
but
okay.
yeah, I can't quite remember whether I did see that or not. But yeah, just the fact that you're getting such a good look at something like that from such a close range, that was by far and away the most unsettling aspect of it to me. I just couldn't believe it. It was something else.
So while, of course, this video, I don't know how long it was that you were privy to. What would you say about the behavioral aspects of it? From what you were watching.
Well, it wasn't moving like it was stalking anything. It was, in my opinion, I guess the best way to describe it was just, I guess, kind of just moving along, doing its thing, and it was just going for the bait, and it wasn't acting vicious or anything like that. It was just doing its thing, basically. That's about the best way I can describe it. It walked up on the bait, and it clearly went for the bait, and after it had done that, then I guess what's next is the best way to describe how it looked. But looking at its face, you couldn't really, just thinking back what I can remember about its face, I don't remember seeing anything that you could describe as an expression on its face or anything like that. But yeah, just I think I remember seeing kind of like I got like a what's next vibe out of after it took the bait. That's the vibe that I got, if I remember correctly, off of it. Is just okay. I've got this bait now or this food. What's next?
Oh, okay. Something akin to something akin to someone at the workplace, wherever you work, going to the vending machines, getting a soda, and then, oh, got my soda. Now it's time to move on to whatever else I'm doing now, right? Something that, is that a good analogy?
Yeah, pretty much. That's the vibe I got.
Wow.
It actually turned to the camera and looked into his soul.
Hey, you never know. But
yeah, I have a question.
Yeah, please, because I got a few more. But
well, go ahead. Keep going.
Man, my brain is going in overdrive. Were you able? Well, I guess you made it. From what I gather, it was up close. So eyes, teeth. Would you say it was bulky, or would you say it was proportioned well?
Well, because of how close it was to the camera, it was really hard to tell how bulky it was. It was really hard to tell how big it was also, because I never got to see the whole thing because of how close, again, it was to the camera. I don't know how high off the ground the camera was, but if I remember, and it's been a while since I've seen that. It has been years since I saw that, but I just trying to remember what that video looked like. I think that camera must have been pretty close to waist high on it, maybe just a hair above waist height, because its chest, its torso area, that, from what I remember, that is pretty much what was even with the camera lens. But yeah, as far as its height or weight would go or build, yeah, I'd have to guess on that. I'm not really sure. And yeah, don't get me started on that whole weight thing, because yeah, a lot of people, a lot of eyewitnesses who report Dogman sightings and report Sasquatch sightings due to no fault of their own. But I think a lot of people, they really missed the boat when they tried to estimate the weights of Sasquatch and of Dogman.
Explain that, Vic.
How much time do you have?
Well, we got all the time you need. Explain what you're talking about. Explain to the audience what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think it deserves some explanation, Vic, because from what I'm thinking you're going to tell us, it's going to be something very informative. Please do so.
Well, to try and wrap it up and put a nice bow on it, I guess the best way to explain it is there's a scientific principle called square cube law. And that law basically states that anytime you double the size of an object, take a cube for example, anytime you double the size of an object, the mass, in other words, weight of that object, is multiplied by a factor of 8. Now, to demonstrate how that works, if you take a cube that is 1 foot wide, 1 foot tall, 1 foot deep front to back, and let's pick a nice even number. Let's say that cube that's 1 by 1 by 1. Let's say it weighs 1 pound. Okay, now if you double the size of that cube, and all of a sudden now it's 2 feet tall, 2 feet wide, 2 feet deep front to back. Okay, if you wanted to recreate that 2 foot by 2 foot by 2 foot cube using 1 foot by 1 foot by 1 foot cubes, it would require 8 cubes to do that. So in other words, now you've got an 8-pound cube that is 2 feet by 2 feet by 2 feet. To break it down, if you looked at the face of that 2 foot by 2 foot by 2 foot cube, and if it was broken into those smaller cubes, you would notice 4 1 cubic foot cubes on the front wall of that larger cube. And then if you went around to the back side of that 2 foot by 2 foot by 2 foot cube, you'd also notice 4 smaller 1 foot by 1 foot by 1 foot cubes. So now it's easy to think that only works when you're talking about cubic objects, objects that are in the shape of a cube, but that's not true. As long as you keep everything in proportion, it doesn't matter if it's a cube, if it's a human body, you name it. As long as everything is kept in proportion, if you double that object, then its weight's going to multiply by a factor of 8. Now, of course, a Great Dane and a horse, they have similar proportions, but they do vary to a certain degree. So this isn't a perfect example, but let's take a 200-pound Great Dane. There are male Great Danes who get to be roughly 200 pounds in weight. Okay, yeah, and those same Great Danes, it's pretty common for them to be about 3 feet at the withers, their shoulder, in other words, or their shoulders. Now, if you double their height to 6 feet, can you think of an animal that is roughly 6 feet at the withers and weighs 1,600 pounds?
Oh, that makes perfect sense. I mean,
Certain horses, right?
yeah, you've got your average horse in the rodeos, that the ones where you see them do the saddle bronc event. Those horses, roughly, those alone, and they're not the biggest horses out there. Those horses, they start them out. Those cowboys that are doing the saddle bronc event, those horses on the average weigh 1,200 pounds. They're thicker, more robust. Now you start talking draft horses. I've been right beside a Percheron, and the top of his back was 7 feet tall, easily, Vic. And so, yes, I am totally with you. They were easily over 2,000 pounds. So I'm definitely picking up what you're laying down. It makes perfect sense. They grow exponentially. You can't just double the weight. It's an exponential growth. And like you said, the 1 foot by 1 foot by 1 foot cube going to 2. Yeah, I'm with you. I hope everyone's following. But it is. Yeah, I would not think that an 8-foot Dogman only weighs 600 pounds. I would at least double it, maybe triple it. It's just so hard to tell.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. You understand, square cube law, that's something where, unless you have visual aids, it's really hard to demonstrate what I'm talking about here tonight. But using that whole cube example, that does make it a lot easier to understand and follow along with what I'm putting out there. But here's something that should really blow your mind. Now, let's take a 12-foot Sasquatch. How many times have you heard someone talk about a 10-footer, or even in some cases a 12-foot Sasquatch, where the eyewitness says, wow, it must have weighed 800 pounds, 900 pounds. Well, let's do the math here. Okay, now, if you took a man, don't forget the square cube law principles I just laid out there for you. And no, that's not something I just pulled out of left field. No, square cube law is a bona fide scientific principle. If you take a 6-foot tall man who is 200 pounds, nice round number. Okay, if you double his height to 12 feet tall and everything stays in perfect proportion, now, yes, that man would weigh 1,600 pounds. Okay, now understand, if you have a 12-foot Sasquatch, well, I guess I'm getting ahead of myself here. The average man who's 6 feet tall, his shoulders are probably going to be right around maybe 18 inches wide, maybe 20 inches wide. Okay, now if you take a 6-foot tall Sasquatch, their shoulders are not going to be 20 inches wide. They're going to be well over 2 feet wide. So understand, if you double a Sasquatch's height, the 6-foot Sasquatch, if you double his height to 12 feet, okay, now you're not talking about something that's likely going to be just 8 times heavier than a 6-foot tall man, an average 6-foot tall man. You're talking about something that's going to be well over 8 times heavier than a 6-foot tall man. Because again, as long as things stay in proportion, then square cube law works. If things stay out of proportion or don't stay in proportion when you start increasing the height or size of an object, then those principles go out the window. Now, since we're talking about a Sasquatch, if it's a 12-foot tall Sasquatch that has 6-foot wide shoulders, Guess what? If you shrunk it down to a 6-footer and kept everything in proportion, it's going to have 3-foot wide shoulders. So in other words, it's going to weigh quite a bit more than 200 pounds.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, I'm not doing a very good job of explaining this, but yeah, what I'm saying here is, yeah, if you have a 12-foot tall Sasquatch that's more than twice as wide as the average 6-foot tall man who's 200 pounds, it's quite a bit more. It's quite a bit thicker front to back than the average 6-foot tall man. Its arms are a lot more robust than the average 6-foot tall man. Its thighs are a lot more robust. Everything about it is a lot more robust than the average 6-foot tall, 200-pound man. Now you're starting to understand that, yeah, that 12-foot tall Sasquatch, that 10-foot tall Sasquatch, it's going to weigh quite a bit more than 1,600 pounds. So the next time you have an eyewitness telling you about a Sasquatch that they saw that was a 9-footer, and they say it must have weighed at least 600 pounds, that kind of brings everything into perspective. No, more than likely that 9-footer weighed a lot more than that. So the next time you hear an eyewitness talk about something like that, yeah, think about that.
Yeah, I've always been curious about that because I've always approached it from the position of, and this is, I guess you could say, a different angle, but along the same lines of their weight and your point of view that you set out for all the folks. You just put it out there. I take, for example, a gorilla. The average male gorilla, full grown, 500 pounds, and yet they grow between 5 and 6 feet tall, and they're 500 pounds. So I usually, when people mention these extremely large Sasquatch, 10 foot, 12 foot, I think of the exponential growth, the square cube law, like you said. I think of the exponential growth in terms of gorilla. But then again, like you said, square cube law. Take a gorilla, do the square cube law. And I think that would probably be, if someone used a gorilla instead of a human, that would be, you would get a closer or a more truer guess at the weight. Do you understand where does that sound? I don't know if I'm making sense, but that's kind of how I view it.
Sal, you're not making a lick of sense.
Sorry about that.
Now you see what I go through all the time.
Yeah, instead of a human, a gorilla. That's what I'm saying, because a gorilla is way more robust than we are. Their bones are thicker, more dense. The frame is more full of muscle, so the whole 9 yards. So that's why you get a 500-pound gorilla, roughly, between 5 and 6 feet tall. So if you applied square cube law to a 10 or 12 footer, would you say that you may get closer to the actual weight of a 10-foot tall, 12-foot tall Sasquatch if you used the gorilla in place of the human?
Well, I'm not really sure about that. I'm not sure that a Sasquatch, if it was shrunk down to maybe 6 feet in height, it wouldn't have the same proportions as a gorilla, because proportionally, a gorilla's torso is longer compared to the length of its legs than what a Sasquatch's torso is compared to the length of its legs. Yeah, Sasquatch, they do have proportionally longer legs than what a gorilla's got. And also, too, yeah, I've had it thrown back in my face. Well, yeah, a 3-foot kid. 3-foot kid's not going to weigh 50 pounds in most cases, Vic. So your hypothesis doesn't work. Well, number one, it's not my hypothesis. It's a scientific principle, like I said. And number two, kids don't have the same proportions that an adult's got. Kids have proportionally shorter arms. Their heads are bigger proportionally than an adult's head is going to be in comparison to their torso, to their body. Their legs, kids' legs aren't as long proportionally.
Yeah, they got to grow into their head, basically.
Kids are messed up looking creatures, dude. They're the real cryptids.
Yeah. And I'm only speaking strictly weight, Vic, because you're making good points there about the proportion of the arms, the legs, all that stuff. You're making, to me, you're making sense.
Not to me.
And I'm just, but I am, at the end of the day, I am with you in regards to people getting a very mistaken weight, being way off the target, just due to the fact that a lot of people oversimplify it, and square cube law makes perfect sense to me.
All this science stuff and these books. I don't know about all this.
Now, since we're talking Bigfoot, have you ever had any experiences, Vic? Or are you a poor person like me that's only had some that may have been?
My experience, it falls into the category of it might have been a Sasquatch, but
Sounds
I'm
like
all
me.
but convinced it was. I can't see how it could have been anything but I didn't actually see it with my own two eyes, so I can't say that I know. I definitely had a
Whoa.
Sasquatch experience.
Whoa, wait a minute. That's weird. So you saw it through someone else's eyes, like a remote viewer. That's an amazing paranormal experience right there.
So
Yeah, that
please,
would be.
Vic, tell us about your event.
Yeah, tell us
there.
what happened.
Well, when I was growing up, there was a neighbor 2 doors down he was in the dictionary next to the term outdoorsman. His picture should have been right there because this man, he had done everything. He was in the 70s when I wasn't even 10 yet, and he was already in his 70s. And I never will forget, I used to go over there, the poor guy. Man, I used to go over there and I just loved hearing all these stories that he had to share about hunting in this place, hunting in that place, hunting tigers and interesting all these interesting experiences. He even at one time actually he was attacked by a black bear. And when he told me that, I never will forget, I was probably about 13, I think, when he told me about that experience. But I never will forget when he told me about being attacked by a black bear. I thought, okay, yeah, well, maybe he's going a little too far here. And then next thing I know, he's pulling up his pant leg to show me the marks in his leg that he still had from the teeth. And I thought, whoa, this guy's a real deal after all. But no, I used to go down and sit on this guy's couch and just listen to story after story and we're at my welcome to the point where he used to just pop out the newspaper and start reading the newspaper. Well, yeah, I was too young back then to realize that that was my cue that, yeah, you wore out your welcome. So it's time to get stepping. But anyway, no, that man, he told me that once I was old enough to be able to go deer hunting, he was going to take me. He had a farm way out in the middle of nowhere, and he told me that he would take me to his farm and if as long as I got my hunter safety courses out of the way and I had my hunting license, then we're going to go. So, yeah, the time came. I took all those courses. I got my license, and he took me out to his farm. And yeah, the next morning, right before daylight, he explained, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to walk about a mile that way, and there just was nothing but woods and ravines and hollows and all that stuff. Just nothing, no homes. We're going to walk about a mile that way, and I'm going to stake you out in this huge hollow where you're just basically going to wait. The sun's going to come up not long after we get there. You're going to wait there until I come get you right before sundown. So that's what we did. He just took me out there. Sorry about my dog making all those noises, snoring in the background again. But anyway, that's what we did. We just hiked in this one direction for roughly, I guess, about a mile. And he staked me out with my back up against this huge tree. And then he said, okay, I'm going to be a couple of ridges over in that direction. You stay there. You don't go anywhere. I'm going to come in and get you when it's time to head in. So I did what I was told. Well, another thing that he had put a bug in my ear about was there was this horse he had named Red, who was, I guess, borderline dangerous. He would kick you as soon as look at you. He would bite you as soon as look at you. Well, I'm sitting there, not thinking about Red, of course. I'm sitting there and I think it was probably close to noon when all of a sudden I hear this horse that was on this steep bank behind me that was heavily covered with leaves. I hear this horse sound that was probably, I guess it sounded like it was maybe 20, 30 feet behind me. So I instantly thought, oh, that's Red. Watch out. So I wheeled around to look back behind me to see. I knew I was going to see Red there, but I didn't see anything. There was nothing there but just a slope, a really steep slope with all kinds of leaves on it and tree trunks. Well, then I got to thinking, even though I was that young, I started thinking, okay, let's think about this now. This slope behind me is way too steep for almost any horse to navigate. And if a horse did get a wild hair and decide to try and tackle this slope, I'd hear him coming miles away because of all this leaf litter on the slope. So, yeah, that was the extent of the experience. I never did see anything back there, but I can't think of anything else it could have been that could have been 20 feet behind me. And then when I go to look, I don't see anything. And it was almost a perfect horse whinny. So that's my experience. Was it a Sasquatch experience? Again, I can't say for sure that it was, but if it wasn't, what was it?
Yeah, that's very similar to what happened to me. But we were hearing the classic the howls off in the night in the distance, and it was just a classic woo way off in the distance. And this is in the middle of Sam Houston National Forest. And of course, the thing that for me, with one of my Bigfooting buddies that lives in Houston, Joe, shout out to you. And we were out there, and as soon as we heard the woo really loud, coyotes go crazy. Then next thing you know, we hear another woo, and coyotes instantly shut their mouths. And this happened a few times, and I don't remember if Joe was able to record it or not, but later on down, we did a little running around, a couple of ponds that were out there in the area where we were researching, and he wanted to go out in the middle of the night. And I'm like, no, we're a blind 5-year-old child playing hide and go seek with an adult. I said, this is not smart. But anyways, we went around we went around the pond and all this other stuff and in a little area, and then we came back, and then we came back to the fire, and then of course we were sitting there talking about it, and I said this was I thought that was not very fruitful at all because we're blind out there. Long story short, not too long after that, he thought he saw a dark shadow off in the distance. Of course, it was hard because it was a dark night. We didn't have any stars in the sky, and where we were at, there was a little clearing, so you could see up above. But you start looking at the trees; it's dark. He thought he saw a dark shadow around the pond, and we were only where our camp was from the pond was maybe 100 yards away. He thought he saw a shadow. He said, "Hey, I thought I saw something." So we started walking towards that pond, and then we heard the woo sound again. And so next thing you know, he's fumbling with his phone and he starts recording. And the closer we got to that pond, about 60 yards away, he was recording, and we heard the proverbial, everybody talks about the rock clack, Vic. We heard that, and we were able to record it, but that was about the extent of any type of encounters that I may have had that I've had. And then of course, I've seen the bent over trees, X structures, and everything else. So you're in good company, Vic. I'm like you. The signs are there, but depending on who you talk to, they'll tell you, well, it wasn't, and others will tell you it is. And I just leave it at that. But, I guess it's part and parcel. Is there anything else I should expect since you've been at this longer than I have?
Oh, not that I know of. Yeah, sounds like our experiences were pretty similar.
So, Vic, what made you think that Winnie was a Bigfoot? Do you think that because, they can mimic that, or?
Well, yeah. What else could have been back there behind me, 20 feet from me, making it was almost a perfect horse whinny. And the volume was just, if you've been around horses, they do certain things. When they clear their nostrils, when they whinny, they do certain things that, because of their lung volume, you can be around horses for a long time, and I think it still just blows you away, the volume that they can generate because of that lung volume. So yeah, the lungs that made that sound, I can't see there being any way they could have been human. There was size to whatever it was that made that whinny. So when you put everything together about that experience I had, that's why I think it almost must have been a Sasquatch. Since I didn't see one, I can't say it was a Sasquatch, but if it wasn't, what was it?
And I'm confused because, didn't you say that he had a horse out there, though?
Well, see, that's the thing. We were a mile away from where he kept his horses. His horses were in a corral. And because I was so taken aback by that sound, so close, at first I didn't put two and two together and realize, okay, well, Red's in a corral about a mile away from you right now. So that can't be him. And also, too, pointing towards the idea that it couldn't have been a horse, I would have heard a horse from
Yeah, you're right.
mile off.
I get it.
Yeah, so that's why.
Okay, that clarifies it. So that being said, what are your thoughts that it could have been a different type of cryptid? I mean, that's a question I have for you. I get reports of all kinds of
weird cryptids.
Yeah, weird cryptids. We get flying cryptids, and we've talked on our show about these, dinosaurs for lack of a better term. I don't know what else you'd call them. They look like dinosaurs. I mean, like, or, you know, some sort of reptiles. And we get Goatman reports. Do you think it could have been something? Because I know that Goatman is known to actually manipulate how it sounds, and it can mimic voices very well. Like I was saying the other day on one of the shows I've been on, I was telling somebody that I can't remember which show it was or what it was, one of our shows, but I was talking about it. I got a report, the first one that I had that I've gotten of a Goatman that actually was using someone's voice, like it was mimicking someone that they knew. It sounded like his sister, and it was like he was going to the window, and it happened when this person was young. And I'm gonna tell the whole story on the show, but it's just what I mean. Like, do you think maybe that could have been it? Could it have been something like that? I mean, I know you've gotten Goatman reports too, even though that's not your expertise. People do send you reports of odd cryptids. What do you make of it? What do you think that could have been a Goatman? What do you think of these other cryptids? Do you believe in them?
I do believe that they might be out there. Doing what I do, I think I'd be crazy to just dismiss out of hand the possibility that they might actually exist. I'd bet money on the fact that they actually do exist. How many there are out there, I don't know. But as far as your question goes, yeah, I guess it's possible it might have been a Goatman. But back to that adage, if you hear hooves clicking on the floor, think horse, not zebra. Yeah, could have been a Goatman, but the odds are that, in my opinion, it would have been a Sasquatch because they're so much more common than Goatmen are apparently, or some other kind of cryptid.
Well, when I hear hooves clacking on the floor, I automatically think Jersey Devil. Automatically, it just goes Jersey Devil. That's just the way. When I hear a horse whinny, I think centaur. When I hear any kind of goat noise, I'm thinking Goatman.
In all seriousness, though, Vic, going back to your event there, that you strongly feel that was a Bigfoot. You said that the red was, you did it. Hindsight's 2020. Red was in all that stuff. Question is was red used to, people being around it?
Yeah, I don't think that man had many visitors to his farm, but yeah, I think Red probably would have been used to some people coming around him and handling him, but since he was testy, I guess he was a handful.
Yeah, well, I mean, just due to the fact that I'm thinking about that, because if it would have been red, you heard the whinny and all this, the whinny of the horse, and if it would have been red and you turned around to look to see if he was there, if he was kind of testy, I don't think you turn around and looking at it would have made him run off really fast. So, yeah, I would, from all the facts and everything you've said about your story, I would be inclined to 100% totally agree with you that you probably had a very close Bigfoot encounter.
I did leave some. Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
I did leave an important detail out. The slope that I was on, it was a huge hollow. To get to the top of the slope that was behind me, it was probably at least 200 feet. And it was a long hollow, too. There was no place for Red to go if it would have been Red. There was no place for him to go where he could have been out of my sight so quickly. I mean, I took a good look to the left, good look to the right. I looked up the slope. He was just nowhere. No horse was in sight. And then also, like I said, I would have heard him. All that leaf litter, yeah, I would have heard him a mile away. So, yeah, it flat out couldn't have been a horse.
The reason that I thought Goatman was because I've heard so many stories, not necessarily given to me, but the research that I've done, I've heard stories of them being able to mimic sounds very well. That seems to be something that they can do. I know that Bigfoot can do things too, but not on the level that I've heard of Goatman doing. Like, I've heard of Goatman just being like able to mimic people's voices, and I don't know if that's some form of telepathy where they can go into your, mind or whatever. And, yeah, they just seem to be a very malevolent type entity. That's why I was asking if and then it led into my question about other cryptids. Like, what are some other cryptid reports that you've gotten?
Well, I've gotten reports, or I guess I should say a report about a cat man. where this guy, when he was a kid, there was a friend of his, I guess he was kind of on the shady side to start with, who invited him over, and he went over to this guy's house one night, and one thing led to another, and I guess this guy talked him and another friend into taking this little trip down this lonely road to a store or maybe another friend's house, something like that. Well, the way this eyewitness described it, one of his friends, he thinks one of his friends must have transformed into a cat man, but he didn't actually see the transformation take place. I get reports in like that from time to time. I've gotten in, like you said, Goatman reports and other reports. At the start of the interview, I talked about the guy who supposedly had the ringtail dogman encounter. Well, number one, dogmen don't have ringtails. I don't discredit the fact that maybe he encountered some kind of strange cryptid, but yeah, I don't think for a second that it was a dogman. But yeah, there are so many cryptids out there. I mean, wow, we know about the more common ones, but what's really unnerving is what about the ones that we don't know about? And are they worse than dogmen? Are they worse than some of the others? So, yeah, it's just not a very comforting thought.
So then, Vic, tell us a story. tell us a story about the ring-tailed dogman, goatman thing.
Well, there's something else I should probably put out there. I guess there's a little bit of tension that eyewitness is frustrated with me for not wanting to bring him on the show and have him talk about that experience. Or maybe I've got him wrong. Maybe he wanted me to listen to him talk about his experience, to get through all the encounters that come my way. If they're not dogman related, I've got to be pretty particular about the ones that I field, because yeah, I have a hard time fielding all the dogman reports that come in as it is. If I allocate time to talking with people who had experiences with other cryptids, like him, he clearly did not have an encounter with the dogman, then yeah, I mean, it just really wouldn't make much sense when I have, like I said, so much trouble keeping up with my current workload. So yeah, that's a little insight. That's the story behind all that.
Well, and like I've talked to you before, send them my way, and ask them if they would be willing to talk to me, and tell them that I will keep Sal as far away from them as possible, so you won't annoy them. I promise to do that.
Yes, because they will be annoyed, thoroughly annoyed when I'm done with them.
Seriously, no. Just if you could though, send them to us. And, we'd be glad to listen to them and tell their stories, because I'm into, other cryptids besides Dogman. And, I think that the thing with Dogman is, I was fascinated just because I had seen it. But the thing is...
It's a good reason to be fascinated.
Well, I mean, yeah, but once you know it exists...
Right.
I'm curious about these other things.
What else is out there? Yeah.
What else is out there? Because I know I exist as a person, and I know, so why can't all these other things exist? I have consciousness, I mean, why not all these other things? Why does it have to be just a set whatever, if I was created, why not something else?
Definitely.
And so I was just, like I said, if these people, you get to these odd reports, like we've talked about before, just send them our way. And if they're willing to talk to us, then tell us the story. Obviously, if I just contact them and say, hey, Vic Cundiff sent me, then they're probably going to be upset. But, just find out if it's okay, whatever, and then just push it on to us, because we can definitely field those, because that's something that I am into thoroughly, is the non-dogman cryptids, too. I like to hear about that stuff because it's just fascinating to me.
There's so many out there. I mean, the one I've always been intrigued with is the Sykesville monster. I don't know if you've ever read that report, Vic. I just thought it sounds so fantastical and outlandish, but it's a cryptid. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Explain what that is.
The Sykesville monster was supposedly seen by several eyewitnesses in the 50s. And Sykesville is, I believe it's in Illinois somewhere. But these people had this crazy explanation for this particular creature they saw, and it was something that you would think that it came out of like a cartoon or science fiction. It was that outlandish.
Well, if it's that outlandish, though, wouldn't you think that maybe it was made up or something? I mean,
No, but they had several witnesses that
several people saw it.
Yes.
That changes it, because to me, when you get one person saying something that's just outlandishly cartoonish, whatever, then that's why I said I file it into the miscellaneous. And if
Right.
another thread comes up, if I see a flying blue monkey, somebody says they saw a flying blue monkey, I'm like, okay, and I put it in the flying blue monkey file, which there isn't any other flying blue monkeys, and then eventually another one comes in, then you're like, whoa,
Right.
maybe there's something to that. Like when we did the show and we had gargoyles and
The gargoyle type creatures, yes.
yeah, but and I never say to the witnesses, you saw a gargoyle, or
Right.
did it look like a gargoyle? Because I don't want them to get that in their head and then start describing to me a gargoyle,
Mhm.
because you can lead them that way.
Yes, correct.
So whenever I talk to these people, the ones that I did talk to, they actually said, yeah, it looked like a gargoyle. Like this, I let them say it, because I didn't want to say it. And two of the accounts had what would look like a broken chain. I'm not going to say it was the same creature because they were clear across the country. Like one I think was in Ohio or something, and the other one was in like New Mexico, near White Sands or something. But it was just like, it was crazy, man. It was like,
That's, but when you think about it, not so much, because flight, if you can fly, you can
Yeah.
cover a lot of ground real fast. So, Vic, what is your take on some of these really strange cryptids that are reported out there?
Well, when you're talking about the really strange ones, Mothman and the Jersey Devil and other ones that are even stranger than them, the reports are so similar. I think where there's smoke, there must be fire, like what Josh just said. You've got so many people who are reporting basically the same thing, and that's what you would expect if it's a bona fide entity. What it is, obviously, we don't know, but I think there must be something to them.
I'm just, I recently, in passing, and not that I keep up with the Mothman on a regular basis, but, on social media and a lot of these paranormal groups that are out there on Facebook, et cetera, there have been a lot of reports about the supposed Mothman type creature being spotted in and around the Chicago area. And this is over the course of the last 6 to 8 months. So what is your take on that? Or you've not kept up with any of that? Or what do you think, Vic?
Well, yeah, I really haven't kept up with the Mothman phenomenon, but I think there just might be something to that. I mean, like I said, there's so many credible eyewitnesses who, in my opinion, are credible. They seem credible, who have come forward and basically reported the same thing. And if that's the case, then quite likely there's something to their claims. So I wouldn't be surprised if there is a Mothman or there are Mothmen out there.
do you believe in ghosts?
I do. Now, I believe in what we call ghosts. Are they actually spirits of the dead? We don't really know. Maybe they're somehow invisible extraterrestrials or whatever. I don't know. Can an extraterrestrials have the technology to become invisible? Well, we know how to basically become invisible. We don't necessarily have the technology yet to make that a reality, but we know what it would take. But yeah, what a ghost is, what we call a ghost, an invisible entity that can manipulate various things. What a true ghost is, I don't know. But I do believe that, yeah, I guess it's possible that there are things that go bump in the night that we just can't see.
The I don't know if you listened to me and Chris Edge, and with Sal, we were on Chris Edge's show. You're probably real busy, probably didn't have time to listen to it, but I talked a little bit about a case that I don't want to say invest. I don't know, what would you call it? Like, listen to someone talk about their abduction experiences. And
I don't know if it's a formal interview, but this person just shared a lot of her experiences to him.
Yeah, with
Vic.
me and a guy that worked with me and is still one of my best friends. And she told us all these stories, and I'm not really like a big like UFO person or anything. I mean, that's not like one of my favorite subjects, but I do get intrigued when I get some of these reports. I do get some pretty crazy reports sometimes. she told us an abduction experience that she had, and she said that these entities were able to be invisible and that they could actually move. And I know, Sal, you remember this, that she told us told me that they could move through a wall. You know, they could
materialize something similar.
deatomize.
Yeah. Something similar of what people are used to seeing on Star Trek, you know, beam me up, Scotty, that type of thing.
Yeah, that they could come through your wall. I mean, I don't know what kind of technology would allow, you know, facilitate that. That's crazy. That's beyond what I could comprehend. But she was adamant that that is possible. And I had a friend who, my brother, now let me just explain. My brother was a Satanist at one time, and he is a Christian now, born again Christian. He's turned his life over. He has an amazing story. I mean, and I told him anytime he's ready to give his story, he's ready, and he hasn't come forward yet, but he knows I've talked about it before. He doesn't have a problem with me talking about it, but he changed his life, but he had help from a guy who was a Christian, but also a Buddhist. Now, a lot of people who don't know, they'll be like, how does that work? Well, it works because Buddhism is a philosophy and Christianity is a religion. That's the truth. And he followed the Buddhist philosophy. Now, some people will take it in a religious form, but there is a Buddhist philosophy. So he was a Buddhist by philosophy, a Christian by religion. That's his whatever. I actually experienced with my own, I saw this with my own eyes. I saw him lift my brother up, like where my brother's feet moved, like he was detaching what he said was an entity. And I was with 3 other guys, and we saw it. I mean, and 2 of those guys, Armando, we saw this happen with our own eyes. And this guy also could read your mind. And I'm not kidding. I am not kidding. I was working with this guy. That's how I met him. And it was almost like it was fate, because he was one of the pivotal people that helped my brother get released from Satanism. And he started talking to me. I didn't really like him at first, because when I first meet people, I'm just like, hey, what's up? You know, and if they just start chatting away, I'm just like, who is this person? You know? And I just wasn't in a talkative state, you know. I had just lost my grandmother. And so I was very close to her. So at that point in my life, I was not really I didn't want to make a new friend. So this guy continued, he persisted. And so he ended up proving to me his ability. Like, I was looking at a magazine. I believe it was a Texas Monthly. I'm not going to get into, you know, and I was thinking about someone, and he was like, you'll see them again someday. And I'm like, I wasn't like, how do you know what I'm even thinking, you know? And he named the person. Yeah. And I was like, whoa, like it blew my mind. Like it freaking blew my mind. I could not believe that this guy actually could read my mind. I mean, it was weird. And he did it a couple other times, and it spooked me. And I asked him politely, I was like, can you not do that? Because it really unnerves me. I really don't like, I was like, how would you like it if I had that ability and I did it to you? Of course, he's like, oh, I wouldn't care. We should all share information. I'm like, I don't know. No, please don't do that. And so he was like, okay, I won't do it. Well, I don't know if he did or did not, you know, whatever. But this guy, he actually told me one time, because I went into his room, because the place where we worked at was like people lived there. And it was a place for people who had not a halfway house, but like it was like for people who had been homeless, and it gave them a place to live. And they
like a shelter,
kind of a shelter, but a nicer one.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like there's a lot of these now in Austin, and I can't give the name of it because we actually still do work for them sometimes. And so this individual, he told me he had a room there on site, like he was a former homeless person or whatever. And so like I went into his room one time. He wanted to show me, because he painted, you know, he did these drawings or whatever. And so I'm standing there like right in the doorway or whatever, and I felt something tug my pant leg. And I was like, whoa, what was that? And so then when I went into the living room area where he was showing me this canvas of what he was doing, and I heard something moving around in the kitchen. And I was like, okay, you know what? I'm really creeped out. I'm gone. So I walked out. Well, later on, he starts talking to me and he tells me, he's like, well, those aren't demons or anything. They just need help, you know? And he's like, there's two really bad things you have to worry about when it comes to spirits. And he said one are cloaked aliens and the other is demonic entities. Two separate things, according to him. And like I said, if this guy hadn't shown me a lot of different stuff that proved, you know, I would have thought this dude's just a lunatic.
He's a crackpot.
He's just crazy, dude. And another really crazy thing happened to me there at that particular place. There was a guy that was considered to be schizophrenic. And I've never said this on the air. I might have told you this, Armando. I don't know. But I was sitting in the library area and there was a guy, and I can't say his name because I don't really think it's the right to do that, to call him out, but he had some problems, and this individual had what they said was schizophrenia, and I had heard him talking to himself or talking to what he thought were entities or something, and he was just over there babbling away, kind of arguing, and so I asked him, I'll call him Oscar, because that's close to his name. But anyway, I asked him, I said, Oscar, can you do me a favor? Can you not yell? Because there's me and there's another individual here in this little library area, you know. I told him that. I said, look, there's two people here in the library and you're being very disruptive. And he's like, it's not me. It's, you know, whatever, some name. He made up some name, Mark or Matt or some Matt, some very normal name, sounding name. And I said, well, then can you ask that person to shut up? Okay, because you're being disruptive, and if you don't stop the conversation, like, you know, what's going on with this, then you have to take this conversation to your room. You need to go back to, you know, whatever. So he sat there for a few minutes, and he started saying, "Shut up," which was my mistake for telling him to say that, you know, I guess. And so I said, "Look, okay, don't respond." All right, and I'm just thinking this guy is just completely off his rocker. He's just a crazy person. Here's what happened. I was sitting there in this little library area, and there was one other lady that was there with us, and she had gotten up and left. So it was just me and this individual I call Oscar. And I know his voice. He had a very distinct voice. And I heard like a whispering noise, and I thought, whoa, that's weird. That was a completely different voice than this man's voice. And so I lowered the magazine that I was reading, and I watched him, and his voice was not him doing it. He had his head down, his mouth was not moving, had his hands over his ears, and I heard a voice clearly speaking that was not him.
That's freaky.
That, yeah. Have I told you that story? I don't know if I told you. And it freaked me out. Like, I mean, I was like, I put the magazine down, I got up and was like, well, take it easy. And I just walked out of there, and I felt like my skin crawl, and the area around that guy was cold. And I went back to the control room, where what's what we call the control room, where the receptionist area was, where this individual that helped my brother, and he was kind of laughing. And I was like, what's so funny? And he goes, oh, you met Oscar's friend. And he's like, I see it clear as day. He goes, it's a demon. It's clearly a demon. And he's like, and it's an attachment. It's attached to his vertebrae. Like, he told me exactly where it was. It's like it hovers above him. When he told me that, I thought, wow, that's amazing, because I heard the sound coming from above this guy.
Oh, wow.
And without being prompted, this guy says, he goes, you know, your brother has that. I never said anything about my brother to this guy. And then he also went on to talk about how my house had a portal, you know, never told this guy it was so freaky. I'm not kidding. And so then I introduced him to my brother and then my friend, you know, Scorpion. We all met this guy. We all knew this guy, and he helped my brother. He prayed for my brother, and he did this detachment thing of what was like a, you know, when I asked him to describe these entities, I said, what did they look like to you? And he said they looked almost reptilian. And he said that, but they didn't have like legs and limbs like we do, but they had like these appendages that kind of could come out. and they had like this weird like tail looking thing that would attach to to your back.
Oh.
And that's really odd because I had a friend that's a chiropractor. She's got a very successful chiropractor business here, and she was with this guy, and this guy, like, they had just finished making love, I guess. I don't want to just get too graphic, but they were laying in bed, and she said that when he rolled over to go to sleep, that something came out of his back. And actually, this individual, you know her, but she said that something came out of this guy's back and like floated up into the ceiling. And she said it was black, like a weird looking, like weird face, scaly looking almost. And it was so bizarre because, whatever it was that this guy that had detached from my brother's back, it made him come up off the ground. Not levitate, but like he felt something pull him, and he went up onto his tippy toes. And I saw it happen, and it looked weird. And my brother, he was behind my brother praying, and he was doing this movement, and the light flickered too when it happened, and he did it in our house. Yeah, and so when you said, Vic, that you think that these things are that could actually be like an alien or something that can become invisible, yeah. And according to this individual, he told me lots of weird stories. He told me that he believed that there were aliens that could cloak and that they could go in and they could move around just like spirits. But he made a very clear distinction between ghosts, aliens, and demons. And he said that each category of those different things had subcategories to it, like the demonic entities.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and then we talked, me and him, about what he believed. He was actually the first person that ever talked to me about the Book of Enoch and how he believed that there were different levels of demons that were different from the fallen angels and the rebellious angels, and that how there were everything in between, that they were the descendants of this and that. And I was just like, I was confused. At that stage of my life, I was not, I was in my 20s, and I was just like, wow, that's amazing. But yeah, if he hadn't shown me that, and if I hadn't heard that voice speak with my own ears, I probably would have just been like, no way.
You'd have poo-pooed all that.
I don't, I wouldn't have, because I was living in a house that had stuff going on, but I would
completely poo-pooed.
Yeah, I just didn't think a schizophrenic person was the demonically possessed person. I thought it was just a mentally ill person. Then I realized that guy is possessed or obsessed. And so I asked this person, I said, can you help him? And he says, no, I can't help him. He's like, there's some people that are like, they're beyond help. He's like, I can't do anything. That demon is literally feeding on his life force, and it has literally made him insane. He's like, so I wouldn't be able to help him because he wouldn't be able to give me the permission to do it because that demon had warped his mind so bad. And then I did find out later on that that person did pass away or whatever, but it was messed up, but the point is that, the guy proved what and that goes with what you were saying. And I was actually going to talk about all these things on another episode, and, I just talked about it now. So thanks a lot, Vic. You ruined that. Now I have less material for my show. Thanks a lot, Vic. Not to mention you took all my Dogman stories. Thank you, Vic. I appreciate it. No, it was my pleasure.
You're holding out on me.
Well, I have to. I got to get mine. You know what I'm saying, fool? I got to get mine. No, I'm just kidding, Vic. No, seriously, man. Now there's a lot of stories, and I've actually gotten a few really cool Dogman stories lately. So I'm gonna do a show, whatever. But I guess that's the next question. Like, how are we gonna do that? Because am I gonna come back on your show at some point? I guess you give me another year.
Oh, you're always welcome. Anytime you're ready to come back on, just let me know.
Well, just make sure that you let people know that you're going to be on our show, and they'll definitely come over, But
yeah, we're here to send the hardcore. We know that our show is going to attract hardcore Dogman people because they want to hear Josh. And I guess, they're probably thinking there's going to be a lot more stuff that he hasn't said on Vic's show. Well, guess what? There may be some, but anytime we get hardcore Dogman people that are not aware of your show, Vic, we're going to send them your way and tell them go check out all of Vic's stuff.
I don't think any hardcore Dogman has not heard of Vic at this point.
I don't know. You'd be surprised. Or some newcomers. that are just now finding out about Dogman?
I'm never surprised. Lord Worthington is never surprised. No, you know what it is, Vic? I think that like what I was talking about with the whole ghost thing, I think our show crosses over boundaries between ghost and Dogman and everything in between. You know what I mean? And that's our niche, is just anything and everything.
And we ask the question
that involves supernatural.
Are they connected?
Paranormal. Yeah. And are they connected? Because like I said, we have a Ouija board show that we're going to release.
Ugh.
And it, yeah. And there's still more to that. There's still a whole nother show for that too, you know? And we get reports of a lot of weird stuff. Like I had a guy that said that he saw what looked like first he started describing it as a Dogman, but when he went more in depth, I was like, that's not a Dogman. I don't know what it is. It sounded almost like, okay, and now you know, Sal, living in Texas, a javelina hog.
Yeah.
Like a razorback. Like in Arkansas, they call them razorbacks, you know? Here we call
indigenous pig to Texas, basically.
The javelina.
Yeah, before the Spaniards brought all the pigs, you know, the European brought all the wild pig, or domestic pigs.
They interbred.
Domestic pigs and released them, and some also got busted loose when the Native Americans would raid, the settlers and everything else, and their livestock turn it all loose.
But prior to that, there was a javelina.
Yes,
hog.
It's the original one. Yes.
Yeah, and that was the indigenous species. It was here, and it's
There's still some around.
There's still some. Yeah, it's a scaled down version of a giant prehistoric pig that lived here, and it's just a smaller one. But some of them would get pretty good size, but not like what you're seeing, these mutant hogs.
Not gargantuan.
No, not these hogzillas that you're hearing about. 1,200, 1,500 pounds. Unbelievable.
Those are just feral domestic hogs. That's all they are.
Yeah, well, they've interbred. Yeah, and then they've interbred with 3 or 4 different types.
Yeah,
but the point is, we're getting off track here. I'm trying to bring you back, Sal. Dang it.
Back.
Here's what it is. This guy claims that he saw something that looked like that because he kept describing the nose as hog-like, and he didn't say hog-like, but when he was telling me, I just kept going like, what? So what went through my mind, and no disrespect to you, sir, if you're listening to the show, because he is actually a pretty cool guy. I think he's genuine. But when he was telling me this story, Vic, I kept thinking, what would Vic do? Vic would just be like, this is not a Dogman, you know? And so I said, sir, I can tell you the story as like maybe it was a hog type entity, like with a pig head. He's like, no, it was a Dogman. And I'm like, really don't want to argue with this guy, but the truth, it does not sound like what you saw was a wolf-headed creature. I don't know what to tell you. It didn't sound like
description didn't match. Huh?
Wasn't a bipedal canine. It was what I thought was a hog, like that had stood up on. Even the lower legs, he didn't see the feet or the whatever, the hooves or whatever. But to me, it was just very reminiscent of what you would think of as a hog type person, whatever. So you have to file that away under the miscellaneous. Well, I have another one that I actually got long time ago that someone claimed, but it was in the realm of like a spiritual encounter because someone saw it in a mirror. So that was weird. And then I thought, wow, but the descriptions were so closely related, like they were so much alike that it's almost like you can't discount that, And so this person, I'm going to get more information from him before I tell the whole story because it's something that happened to him, and he's pretty adamant that it was some sort of wolf-like creature, but it did not sound like a wolf-like creature to me. It sounded more like a hog. You ever heard anything like that, Vic? I mean,
no, I can't say I have.
Yeah, that's what's weird is like you get these reports, and then like I said, the Goatman reports are very disturbing. We got like 3 in one area. In South Austin, where there was a heavily wooded area that's now been developed. But, and of course, these reports were all 10 years ago, around like 10, I think the oldest one was 13 years ago, something like that. And me and Sal were going through there trying to figure out, and one of them is a friend of ours that actually told us one of his accounts, but we're trying to figure out, like, what is this thing? Was it a Dogman? Was it a Goatman? I think we've come to the conclusion that it could have been a Goatman, but it had a head almost like a human type head, but it had like teeth, like big teeth, but then it had, and no one can really say for sure that they saw horns, but bushy hair that kind of went down into mane, and it had dog-like legs. Well, I don't know how to classify that. What would you call that, Vic? I mean, and of course I told one of those stories, I think I told it on your show. I think it was 248, episode 248, just recently.
Mm-hmm.
What would you classify that as? I mean, what is your opinion on that? I don't even think you've told me what you think of that.
Wow, I'm not really sure what category that would fall under. Maybe that is a variation of a Goatman. If you have variations of Dogman, then who's to say you don't have variations of Goatman? So maybe that's what it is. I don't know.
Whenever I first, heard the details on that, Vic, I was actually flabbergasted. I was like, it's got all these varying the characteristics out of these varying cryptids, but you got it rolled up into this one, and the way they described it, I was thinking in terms. Finally, I just said, well, I mean, it sounds more like a Goatman type creature than anything else, but it's. We get a lot of that craziness here in just across the state of Texas. There's all kinds of high strangeness.
Let me ask you a question, Vic. I want to ask your opinion. I mean, not opinion, but I want you to, if you would tell me, you don't have to tell the story or whatever, but like, just what is one of the weirder descriptions of a cryptid that you've gotten, you yourself personally?
Wow, one of the weirder descriptions, and not just a Dogman, but any cryptid.
Yeah, anything. Just like what is one of the weirder ones that you've gotten?
Wow, that is a tough one. Well, to me, I think the weirdest one I've ever fielded was that Catman I was telling you about. Until I had received that report, I'd never received any reports like that. I didn't even know that people were seeing Catmen. So I'd say that was the one.
Well, we, like I said, mainly Josh has fielded, some Catman reports. And again, it points back to what I just said. It's along with the high strangeness that goes on here in Texas. I personally, not until he told me of the accounts he was given by people he knows of Catman, and then now your particular, description, you confirming that you've got a report of that. That, to me, that says I'd like to find out more about that. That is quite an interesting phenomenon.
Somebody said in one of the groups the other day, I think it was one of the Dogman groups. I got to talk to Chris because it might have been one of his. But they said something about there was a show that they saw, like a monsters show or something, and that somebody had given a report of a black panther type entity that had jumped on somebody, and then it stood up and walked away on two legs. And I guess the guy actually talks about it on the show. I got to figure out which one it was. I mean, I'm sure if you look it up, you could probably find it somewhere. Yeah. But I know that that typically, whenever someone speaks of this cat man or whatever, cat people, whatever, it's usually black. That's almost always panther-like is what I got. Can I ask you that, Vic? What did they describe it as?
Well, have you ever seen that movie Sleepwalkers?
Which one is that? Stephen King.
Yeah.
Stephen King movie. Yes.
I was about to say Stephen King.
Where that guy had that kinky thing going with his mom.
Oh, yes. I remember that. Yes, I remember
they were
that
like cat people. Well, that's how it was described. They basically said it looked almost just like that cat entity when he would transform into it. If I remember right, that is, because it was years ago, but I think he said that's what it looked like. He said it was running after him basically at the speed of a car. I do remember that much. He said the thing was gaining on me like a car was driving up on me. But yeah, as far as the appearance would go, that's how he described it.
How did he get away from it then if it was as fast as a car?
Well, he said something along the lines of, it obviously knew he was there. He dove into some weeds, and when it went by, I guess it let him know in some way that it knew he was there, but it just kept going right past him and didn't attack him.
Can I ask you a question, Vic? And are you pressed for time? Do you need to leave or?
Yeah, I am, because I didn't get much sleep at all last night.
I didn't either. I didn't get hardly any sleep today. I had a lot of stuff going on. anyways, I appreciate your time, Vic. Like always, I always have very interesting and stimulating conversations with you. And I appreciate you coming on. And this is actually the first time that Armando's been able to interview and discuss with you on air. So that was cool.
I mean, we could probably do this for another 4 or 5 hours, Vic, but I know that we all have places to go, people to meet, sleep to catch, that kind of thing.
Heck yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Anything that you got to do. But gosh, it's been a pleasure.
Oh, it's been great talking with you guys. Thanks again so much for having me on.
Oh, yeah. Well,
We hope to have you on some other time in the near future. I mean, would you be up for that?
Oh, yeah. Just let me know.
yeah, because we were talking about maybe having you on one day with like Chris, you know,
Yeah.
and then we could all just throw something out there and everybody give their piece of it, what they think is, you know, going
Put their
on.
thoughts on it.
Put
Yeah,
their thoughts
because-
on it. Yeah, because we would love to do some sort of like, because that's our show is a round table. You know, we
Yeah.
want to like do that, like have a panel discussion. We like to do that with people and get their opinions and stuff. And we're definitely open to having other people come on our show and talk. We're not opposed to that. We actually have a few interviews like set up that we're going to be doing pretty soon with eyewitnesses and stuff. But nothing. Like it's not going to be a major staple of our whatever, but you know, like I said, our show is pretty malleable. We're pretty open to whatever.
Definitely. But I tell you what, one thing for sure is, you know, like to let the listeners know that Vic Cundiff, again, is a regular guy. He's real, folks. He's not this mysterious, you know, werewolf or anything that people say. The regular guy. Check out his stuff at dogmanencounters.com. or Bigfoot Eyewitness Radio. You got websites for both and all this stuff.
Actually, folks, he's a government-created robot.
Definitely. But again, Vic, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope to have you back on again, you know, whenever you're ready and we clear it out and clear out the schedule and set it all up again for you.
Absolutely. And everyone listening, DosWolfman88@gmail.com. DosWolfman88@gmail.com.
Wolf and Sal @gmail.com. Please like, subscribe, and, you know, tell your friends. Share it, you know.
Absolutely. Come to our channel.
Definitely.
And that's all the time we have. Thank you once again, Vic, and to everyone listening, good night.
See y'all later.